green light, folks, will start. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, August 7th, 2019 meeting of the Edina City Council. Would you all please rise and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. That was history making. All right. We have let's do roll call, please. Ms. Tim.
Member Anderson?
Here.
Member Brendel? Here. Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Staunton?
Here.
Mayor Hovland?
Here. We have a form of meeting agenda in front of us this evening, and is there anyone that wishes to modify the agenda? Manager Neal, anything you want to change on the meeting agenda?
I don't believe so. Didn't. Other than we can handle this at some other point in the meeting, but we had a meeting placeholder for a possible closed session tonight. After this meeting, we will not need to do that tonight.
Okay. And Member Staunton? That was the issue you were going to check on? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Having had that clarification, is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as shown?
So second.
Got a motion and second to approve the meeting agenda as shown. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then community comment. Are there folks in the audience that wish to address the council on a matter that's not otherwise on the agenda this evening?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Thank you.
And give us your full name and address, please.
As soon as I can get my notes out to remember who I am. Okay. Thank you. I've decided to use this. My name is Bob Tangden. I live at 5241 Lockloy Drive in Edina. And I will read, rather than give my statement, I'm going to read from my prepared remarks. Mr. Mayor and esteemed council members, my name is Bob Tangden. I live at 5241 Lockloy Drive. I bought one of the 3 remaining lots on the Highland neighborhood in 1962. In 1963, 56 years ago, my wife and I built our home on this lot. Then city manager Ken Roslin, whom I had met, told me I had one of the most desirable spots in Edina to raise a family. I had 3 sons. It was a short walk from the elementary school, a half block from the playing fields, and the pond, which was swept of snow in the winter, and also close to the hockey rink. But the coup de grace was the fact that my lot abutted the wild portion of Highland Park. Several acres, he said, that would be maintained as a virtual nature conservancy, a wild, undeveloped state in perpetuity. Once had been part of a farm. A 1-lane farm road existed a few feet behind my property. It turned out there was a right path for kids in the neighborhood, and one of my sons got in a little trouble by having a trap line back there. It ran from the area by the skating rink where skating now located to the meadow underneath Skyline Drive. My Volkswagen easily traversed it. That 1-lane farm trail became a nature trail. A wooden staircase was provided by the city to make 50 feet or so of elevation from Skyline Drive to the nature trail more accessible. Wood chips were placed the length of the path. Signs were erected saying, "Pick up after your dog or you will be fined." And it even reached into the Pokemon game. It's on the Wizards Unite game, the path that went all the way around the lake. Unfortunately, 5 years ago, that all began to change. It became a dumping area for stormwater runoff. Ponds appeared out of nowhere. Walking past became impossible. The small pond became a large collection of stagnant water. adjacent properties were and are severely affected as well. Mayor Hovland and Councilman Staunton were alerted and been very helpful, and were so informed the city engineers of the issue, but to no avail. Their attitude then as now is just, it's a wet spring or a summer. It's always been like this. No, 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 it has not. It's 56 years, and that I addressed that completely. In 1987, the storm of the century brought a foot or more of water in a couple of days. There was no standing water other than puddles. The paths were not affected at all beyond a day or two. Today, we have a catastrophe. Parts of the nature trail are under a foot or more of water. Standing, smelly water covered with green scum is ubiquitous. It looks like the Okefenokee Swamp. Its condition is a total embarrassment for the city of Edina. Put another way, Edina has mishandled of this wild portion of the park, violates the venerable public trust doctrine under which a municipality owes a duty of loyalty and care to its citizens, analogous to a corporation's duty to its shareholders. There's a fiduciary responsibility to take care of this property that has failed.
Mr. Tangden, I hate to interrupt you, but I've let you drift over quite a bit over your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Do you have a petition?
Oh, no, the hook. I'm into my summation, sir.
All right.
I'll
Please
wind it up.
finish.
Tonight, I'm delivering to you a petition signed by nearly 100 residents that live near the Highland Park. The petitions speak to this issue, accompanying our pictures to give you some idea of the extent of the disaster, but they don't do it justice. I invite each and one of you council people to visit me in my home. I will personally take you around and have you view what has become an unmitigated tragedy. A local doctor called it a health hazard, but asked the question, is the city going to wait until someone gets seriously ill or worse before they take the blindfolds off and permanently, I said permanently, fix this problem? That choice, dear friends and fellow citizens, is truly up to you. You can order the fix. Will you?
Thank you, Mr. Tangden. If
And I
you,
would
do you want
like
to
to
make your,
deliver to
do you want to
you,
make
Mayor
your,
Hovland.
yes, would you make your remarks part of the record as well? Would you want to make your remarks? If you hand it to the clerk,
Okay.
and she'll make sure we get it.
Also with this, there are 10 sets of pictures. Will you pass those along down there, everybody, please?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, would you want, Mr. Tangden, would you want to make your written remarks part of the record?
I beg your pardon?
Do you want to make your written remarks part of the record?
Yes, that would be fine.
Do you want to hand that to the clerk too, then, your written
All right,
remarks?
Okay, I hope you can read my writing.
And if you want a copy of that back, we'll send one to you.
I think I made a couple of copies that I scratched off a couple of things.
Okay, all right.
I really did try to shorten it.
Okay, yeah. All right, folks, I noticed other hands up. Yes, ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Anita Silver, and I live at 5060 Interlochen Bluff, right across the scum. My home is at the bottom of a cul-de-sac. My lot and the adjacent lot, owned by John and Marcia Huppenbecker, has a pond. This pond is fed by the drainage from Interlochen Boulevard as it slopes downhill and Interlochen Bluff. It is a depository of dirt, debris, and refuse that is left by cars, construction, wintertime sanding, mown grass, careless trash and recycling people, etc. When I called representatives from the city of Edina to look at the situation, I was told that it is the city's pond, though it is on our properties. Well, the city is not taking care of it. Many years ago, my late husband described the same problem to the city, and they came out during the winter and they dredged the pond. It was a Band-Aid that lasted for several years, but now the situation is far greater and graver. When I asked the city to consider dredging, they told me I would be put on a list and perhaps in future years they would consider it. And now with the flooded condition of the adjacent wetlands, it has compromised the property further. I do not blame the city of Edina for rain, for melting snow, or for global warming, but I do feel they should take responsibility in maintaining their pond, which they have acknowledged is on mine and my neighbor's property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silver. Do you want your comments to be part of the record? We can hand it to the clerk. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Hovland, esteemed council members. We're here to preserve a heritage here in Edina, and it would save
Would
you
you
money
give us your
that
name
you
and
could
ad-
spend on the. My name is Pat Bowles. I live on Brookside Terrace, 4373 Brookside Terrace.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Bowles.
Brookside Terrace is a gravel road that goes back to 1910. It runs along the railroad tracks. Everyone who comes down that road is charmed by it. I invite you all to come down there. And now the city wants to pave over this road with blacktop. Now I understand the city is farsighted and wants to improve everything, but there's no need to improve this road. My daughter has done a lot of research on this and will give you the particulars of it. My
All right.
daughter, Jennifer.
All right, thanks,
Hello,
Ms.
thank
Bowles.
you for taking the time. I understand that you've really thought a great
Jennifer, would you
deal.
give us your full name and address, please?
Jennifer Bowles, and I live in New York City, and the daughter
right.
of my mother.
Okay, thanks,
And
Jennifer.
I grew up on that street since I've been driving down that secret road since I was 3 years old, which was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's young to
And-
drive.
And I asked for the report from Mr. Neal, and he sent me the report. And my concern is when I read the report, there are several factual inaccuracies, and the details are sort of just kind of clumped together. And there's various sections. It's a very complicated project that you have undertaking here, and there's a lot of great things in there for why doing this project. But because of the road that's north of 44th Street, to me, there isn't a reason to pave over it. They say, it says, one of the factual inaccuracies in the report says that all roadways within the project area discharge directly into the Minnehaha Creek. And that's absolutely not true of that particular area. Also, my family dug up that road and put down sewage and water in 1979 that was supposed to be good for 100 years. And I have the picture here, but there's a petition of all the people in this project area. One person wants the paved road. Every other family is opposed to the paved road in the project area, and also the adjoining alley, which you won't be able to pave. And I think that the engineering department sent a memo to you in February saying that 2 families were opposed in the project area, but there had been multiple meetings with family members who were opposed to paving this road. So I would like the discrepancies looked at. I'd like to take some more time. I realize that you've done a lot here, but this is a beautiful road. It's been there since 1910. My mother's living in the home that the farmer lived in that area. And she worked her beautiful home. I want you to see the deer running across this gravel road. We love it. The people who live in this area, the families, want to preserve the heritage of this beautiful. In New York City, when we have roads, the cobblestone roads, we preserve those roads. That's history. So I see that my red light is on, but I would like you to see this beautiful photo.
Sure.
Deer.
We can use the overhead to take a quick look at it. Do you know if the petition from the neighbors has been submitted to City Hall?
Staff can address that,
I know
Mr.
that
Mayor.
they've done all sorts of things, and I am missing 2 of the families. Other families have told me that there are 2 families that are also would have signed this today. I went to get this today because I was surprised to see that memo dating back in February that's saying only 2 people, because I know there's been other meetings where all of these families have come to say that they are opposed to putting a gravel road on this a paved road on this.
There's a
Okay.
gravel road.
It's a complicated issue. I know there's other issues with the Minnehaha Creek, and some sediment is going
Sure.
through some of the old. and
So
there's
is that the petition you have in your hand?
so
or
I
is
have a
that-
petition. I have one of the petitions that my mother had signed. There's 2 people that are on that.
Sure, that's fine.
That project area. And then there's 3 other signatures from today, and I'm missing 2 of the signatures, but I'm aware that they don't want the road to be paved. And I could get those for you within, I'd have to get back to you.
Sure.
So
Well, if you want to
we
hand
love
those,
it.
if you want to hand those to the clerk, please, and then we'll make them part of the record. Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for this.
Sure. Thanks for coming home for a visit.
I have to say, I'm proud of Edina. It's beautiful here. So thank you.
Mr. Cluse, or go ahead, Ms. Weston.
Good evening, Janie Weston, 6136 Brookview Avenue. I have lived in Edina all of my adult life, and I know it's a very conservative town. That's been pretty apparent for many, many years. I have an issue with how an item was handled on last council meeting's agenda. It was put on the consent items list, and it was resolution number 2019-53. This is how it was worded in the heading: approving amendment to city council meeting agenda. And this was item number 20 out of 23. It was buried between road reconstruction and a traffic safety report. By all appearances, this was purposely buried so that you would not have protesters or real activist people here to make a big stink about saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I am neutral on the Pledge of Allegiance. That's not why I'm up here. I'm up here because of how this was handled by the city, where it was placed on the consent list of the agenda. And the consent agenda says all agenda items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine. I would not consider this to have been a routine item because of what had happened in St. Louis Park. If you have the President of the United States tweeting and going on the news about what St. Louis Park is or is not doing about the Pledge of Allegiance, that does not make it a routine item for the city of Edina. So I would like to see, prior to saying the pledge at every single meeting, just one statement, a simple statement said. And I wanted to hear what you would say this evening. And this evening you said, would everyone please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, or basically that. Because some people have issues with it, and I'm not going to get into that at all, I would like to see it addressed as, if you care to join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please do so, or something to that effect. Then I would like to see this revisited, and I'm going to give you 2 suggestions. I can understand why you wanted to bury this, and I'm going to use that term, bury this in the agenda. I looked at the agenda. I thought it was going to be addressed, and I missed it because it was in the consent items, and the heading didn't give any clue what it was. So I would like to see it either, I'm going to give you two ways to handle this that I think are constructive, because the way it was listed on the agenda basically snuck it under the radar, so
I need
citizens
I
were
think
denied.
we've heard that, Ms. Weston.
Okay.
Again, your time is up, but would you give us
Okay.
ideas that you have,
Okay,
please?
my 2 ideas. One would be to revisit it after the next presidential election. Bring it up again as, shall we or shall we not? To give the citizens of Edina the due process of being able to get up and state how they feel about it. I don't feel this was addressed. Or, another way to deal with it would be this fall when we have an election. Put it on the
ballot as a referendum. Let the citizens of Edina vote and take it off of your shoulders directly and make it a vote issue. I think that would be the fairest way to do it. So I just have a problem that I feel the democratic process, that it was walked around on this.
Sure. Well, it was not a public hearing matter. It was not going to be scheduled as a public hearing matter. It was a decision for this council to make. The council made a unanimous decision to say it, and that's why it ended up in the consent agenda. And at the end of the meeting, you would have heard several of us give the reasons why we thought it was important to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So I think we've covered the issue, and but we'll certainly undertake a conversation about your thoughts here with respect to the pledge.
My issue was how it was put on the agenda. I felt it was buried.
Understood.
I was keeping an eye out for it, and I missed it. If I missed it, I think other people definitely would have missed it too. And I can understand for the safety of people that work here at City Hall, that all of you, that there may have been things going on. For instance, the back contractor's door is not accessible from the outside anymore. And I think that may have, you don't have to tell me, but I think it may have something to do with it because of safety for people that are here at City Hall. So anyways, I have those two suggestions. So if you would consider them, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good words, previous speaker. I think you raised some interesting points. My name is Gene Persha, 6917 Cornelia Drive. I think the council acted too hastily and out of fear by instituting the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance recently. Edina was not comparable to St. Louis Park. St. Louis Park dropped the pledge at council meetings for some very good reasons, but it made a big mistake. It didn't consult its residents. There are plenty of protesters, but as reported, the vast majority are from out of the city. Edina gets concerned. It did not have the pledge at council meetings, and it did not want to be seen as an outlier from its bordering cities. This seems, what shall I say, somewhat unpatriotic. The image was important. The change for Edina came with no citizen input. It was put on the consent agenda not worthy of public comment. There was no real reflection by our citizenry. This should never have been minimalized the way it was. I strongly oppose the Pledge of Allegiance at any public forum. I basically have for the last 45 years. It smacks of undue patriotism and loyalty and intimidation to participate with this. I have never seen this in such a suspect document that's overused by everybody throughout this country in various forms, whether it be churches, public meetings, clubs, everything. We have most likely been indoctrinated since childhood. I know what I went through, and I was discriminated because of it. I studied this thoroughly over the last 2 weeks. Some things I've learned. The pledge was written by Francis Bellamy, 1892. Bellamy was both a Protestant minister and a socialist. Interesting combination. This was absolutely written as a loyalty oath. It was really advertised to combat communism and godlessness, especially in the Red Scare time of 1919 and the 1950s. This was meant to engender the dangers of new immigrants, especially children, and indoctrinate them with the new American standards. As Bellamy said, we must Americanize the alien child and instill by repetition a religious feeling. Bellamy compared this to the Lord's Prayer. Bellamy meant the pledge as a form of white nationalism by selecting the usual favored white countries. You'd be surprised what he eliminated. Ireland, Italy, Eastern Europe, the Chinese, and most especially Russia. Bellamy believed the U.S. was destined by God to be the guiding light for other nations. Even former Governor Jesse Ventura called the flag waving and saying the pledge as false patriotism. Absolutely, this was a form of militarism. That's one of the reasons why we have the salute. And by the way, the first salute was this. We had kids in 1943 still doing this in New York City, but of course we have the Nazis involved during the war, so we toned that down to this and eventually to this. As of now, tonight, and I should have done this many years ago, I refuse to stand for the pledge, and I will never recite it in any form, no matter where it is. I've gone through some things. I've been with people who are discriminated, especially the Jehovah's Witnesses. The U.S. Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson, in the famous case of flag saluting, said this is an definitive case limiting the compulsion by saying the pledge. No official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or all other matters of opinion. Did we act too hastily? I take this very seriously. I've studied this very thoroughly, and the comments I made are really surprising to me. That's why I finally have the courage to take the stand tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Persha. Mr. Cluse.
Arnie Bigby, 7621 Edinburgh Way in Edina, in the Southdale neighborhood, really. Deep breath, relax, everybody. This is a feel-good message. I'm here to say thank you. I've done this before. I know how hard you work and how much time you put in with this. By the way, I did time my comments, and they're less than 3 minutes, so don't worry, please. Early in 2018, the council's 4 goals for 2018 and 19 were published. Maintain city assets and infrastructure, maintain service levels, plan for connected and sustainable development, and foster an inclusive and engaged community. And those are pretty bold goals for any community to track and say, I'm going to go public with that, let's see what we can do. And early in 2019, Mayor Hovland, you set out a process, 5-step process. You put it in the About Town publication, that you would inform the community, consult with the community, involve community, collaborate with those of us in the community, and empower the community when we're tackling problems that our city and many cities have. And now the city is actively updating and reporting feedback on those activities and goals and the work that's being done. Jennifer and the communications office is doing a great job with that, I think. The revised edition Edina and some other publications and other messages we get via text is really great in doing that. So I especially appreciate all the progress we've had in areas that are substantial challenges for all communities. And I want to just say a big thank you to you and the city staff, all the commissions, all the board members, Manager Neal, all you council members, for your progress, for taking on the goals, taking on the difficult work for our community. There's a lot to do, as we've heard tonight, and people have concerns. My postscript, the Clover Ride success is really great. I noticed that the new route is going to overlap with the existing route. Have we thought about making transfers available for people?
Good.
Thank you.
All right, we'll make a note of that. Thank you, Mr. Bigby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. George Cluse, 5233 Lockley Drive. Councilman, Mr. Mayor, I just want to add a few little thoughts to the Highland issue tonight. One of the things that's happened is that with this water issue, it's not a thing that's just happened in the last year or 2 years. This has become a perennial problem for the last 5 years, not only in the wooded area, but also in the park area. As our pond there has become shallower and shallower because of natural things that happen with the dying of the vegetation around that, we continue to get more and more water into the park every year, and the streets stay flooded even longer down around the Croydon and the Doncaster area each spring. This is a perennial problem that I want to encourage you to look at and maybe send back to the park board to discuss if need be, or you as a council, I know, have a right to make a determination on that, but I think it's time that you work with the neighborhood a little bit on this issue. When the neighbors have tried to come and work with some of the neighbors have tried to come and work, the issue has been, as Bob did so eloquently state, it's just part of nature. It's not part of nature any longer. It's something that's just it's part of the life now in Highlands. It's a big change, It's a bothersome change for a lot of people there, and I just would encourage you to either refer it back to Park Department or put together some type of task force or little task force with some of the neighbors that are really at impacts in our neighborhood, and let us work on that and come back to you with some recommendations. But it's time to do that. And that's my encouragement tonight.
Good. All right. Thank you for that encouragement, Mr. Close. Anyone else on community comment?
Dave Tangden at 2201 Girard Avenue South in Minneapolis. I used to live at 5241 Lockloy Drive. Mr. Mayor, esteemed council members, Mr. Deputy Chief, if it helps solve the mystery at all, I was the one that ran the trap line back then.
I thought so. There must be a statute of limitations on that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you got up, Dave, because you knew, as the city manager said, you were safe on the statute of limitations. So. And just a postscript to that, Dave Tangden, the son of Bob Tangden, was on the U.S. ski team back in his day as a skier at the University of Colorado on their national championship team, I think. So quite a skier. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Sue Punch Hess. I live at 5237 Lockloy Drive. I'm here to echo the theme of the evening so far from the community around what's happening in that wooded nature area. We have had over the last 5 years engineers from the city come out, and we've been told things like, well, we're listening to the pipes. And we've been told things like, well, stay in touch with us. Well, it's been 5 years. And I think it's time that the city steps up, this council steps up, not just one or two of you, which you've done, but the whole council steps up and says the value of that property to the whole community is significant. It makes access from up on Skyline Drive and Interlochen Drive available down to the park year-round, not just when it's frozen. Also, it makes access to the elementary school. People used to bike and walk through that area in order for their children to get to the Highlands Elementary School. The Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts or Brownies, we used to use that as a learning space. They used to help maintain it for the city. It was one of their service things. So I think it's really important that you take some time to look at this, not just what affects an individual or a few houses, but this is something that's affecting this whole community and changing the value of what we've had inherited, from the people who originally owned this land and what they gave to us, and that we have a responsibility to embrace that, maintain that, and have it be continue to be significantly contributing to the community. Mm-hmm. And we're at a loss. Our community is at a loss right now, and we hire you, we vote for you because you represent our values and what is important to our community and what we pay tax dollars for. And this is something that will make a difference to that whole Highlands community, as well as up on Interlochen, Skyline Drive. It's not just a nice to have, it's something that adds value to Edina and to this particular neighborhood. And we've been told historically that, well, if we do it for Highlands, then we're gonna have to do it over here and over there because other areas are flooding. Well, that's a city planning issue that then should be considered with all the development that's going on in this community and what the impact's going to be on old neighborhoods like the one that we live in, that homes and properties that have been there since the 1950s. So thank you for your time and consideration, but I would really like to compel you to move ahead on this and not let it sit.
Good.
It's been 5 years.
Thank you, Sue. Would you spell your last name for me too, please?
Punch is P-U-N-C-H, and then it's hyphenated Hess, H-E-S-S.
Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council on a matter of concern to them this evening? Okay. Thank you for your participation, everybody, in this process. And we'll take this under advisement as a council, and I know that Member Staunton and I have visited the site several times, each of us, and have some concerns about it, and I think we need to start having a conversation about this particular area along with the other water issues that we've been talking about. Member Staunton.
And I mean, normally we don't respond at the moment when we save our comments for later in the meeting, but this is my neighborhood as well, and And I think Ms. Punch really described it well when she talked about how this is an avenue for folks to walk from Skyline Drive or up near Interlochen to get to the park or to get to the school. It's also a great recreational area for the neighborhood, dog walking or other, without dog walking back in that trail. And it's just not possible anymore. And it really has taken away a part of the community that we all value in that neighborhood. So I understand the frustration, I share the frustration, and I want to see us figure out an answer to it.
Thank you, Member Staunton. Comments are well placed, and I share the same thoughts. All right, let's move on in the agenda to the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing nothing, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as shown?
So moved.
Is there a second? Got a motion and second to adopt the consent agenda as shown. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried? Thank you. And now we are on to the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. We have two items in this portion of the agenda this evening, and one of the items, the first item, is the Edina Chamber of Commerce with their annual Explore Edina report. And Lori Severson from the Chamber is here, and I see an array of folks here.
Good evening, Mayor Hovland, members of the City Council. Thank you very much. My name is Lori Severson. I'm president of Explore Edina, our city's Visitors Bureau. With me this evening, I have Shelley Loberg. She's our director for Explore Edina. And also joining us is Lisa Walker. She is our incoming board chair. So this evening, we're going to give you a quick overview of some of the highlights from 2018. As you recall, we do this every year. I'll start out by giving you some high-level overviews of our financials. Then Shelley's going to step in and show you some of the work that she's done on the media side and publicizing Edina to outside communities. And then I'll step back in and I'll tell you a little bit about our new project, which is the creation of our well-being destination. We do have a presentation. Would you? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. So our mission remains the same as it has for the last 6 years. Our goal is to attract regional, national, and international visitors to Edina, increasing revenues, stimulating economic development, and creating positive awareness of the community as a tourism destination along with all of our assets. This is an overview of our financials. We took a look at our peer median, and then I compared 2017, which was last year's report, to 2018, which was our last completion of our fiscal year. And as you can see, we are running pretty darn close to our peers. We are under on the personnel side, which really speaks to the advantage of having Explore Edina have shared employees with the chamber. It cuts down on the personnel side. Occupancy, as you know, the leasing rates are maybe a little higher here in Edina compared to some of our peer communities, but overall we're actually doing very well from that perspective. Attached with your packet, you do have the completed financials for 2018, so please feel free to review those. And if you have any questions, of course, reach out to Shelley or myself, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions. We'll also take those questions this evening. Shelley, would you like to talk about the media exposure?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening,
Welcome,
Mr.
Ms.
Mayor.
Loberg.
Thank you. Privileged to be here tonight to talk to you. I enjoy my job a lot. I want you all to know that the tourism industry here in the Twin Cities is annually a $13 billion industry in the state of Minnesota, really only second to agriculture. And I think a lot of people in our state don't realize the economic impact that tourism has on our state, in the hospitality, in the restaurants, and the hotels, and the attractions. And Hennepin County certainly generates a great amount of that revenue on an annual basis. One of the first things that we do is print media, and I choose, I like to target females. Females statistically are decision makers in families when it comes to travel, and often in spending money, which I think is true, right guys? And so I like to choose media, and when I'm doing digital targeting, I do target females in many of my advertising decisions. So some of the markets that we're in, you can see Fargo, North Dakota, Rochester, Minneapolis, St. Paul Magazine is local. We use that to promote our fashion show that we do with the retail entities here, and that is an effort to promote the city as a retail destination. That's a very important part of our advertising messaging. And then we do some digital in Des Moines, Iowa with a publication, as well as in Madison. One of the really neat things we've done in Fargo is talk about the high-end home furnishing destination shopping here. There's nowhere else in the Midwest that has the concentration of high-end home furnishings that we have here in the South area on France Avenue. And I get lots of feedback from the Resto, the Room and Board, those brands, that people are coming from those outside markets to buy home furnishings. And we've done articles and social media and digital and print advertising around this message. And I think that's an important part of our retail message that we want to continue to talk about, especially with the building of the new Restoration Hardware on Southdale Center's property. In digital media, we do what I call content marketing articles, and this is basically, it's also referred to as native advertising, but I have articles written and developed, and they talk about how to experience our community as a visitor. So they might be articles about shopping and dining, they might be articles about planning your wedding here, shopping for home furnishings. We've done family activities, we've done a number of themes. Those do get promoted online, they get millions of impressions, and they are the highest driver of traffic to the Explore Edina website. And they cause people to spend more time on our site and also to click out to our stakeholders, which is really important. We want to see people clicking out to other businesses, the retail entities, our restaurants, our hotels, our lodging partners. That's all very important engagement. I also do lots of paid e-blasts, and that's actually part of a grant that I do annually with Explore Minnesota Tourism. They have a grant program where you do about a $21,000 media buy. You get about a third of it back after it's performed, and you turn in all of the paperwork that you ran it, that it was paid for, and then you turn in the results on it as well. It's just one of the ways that Explore Minnesota Tourism supports local DMOs and resort businesses here in the state. Another big part is Facebook and social media. We've added Instagram, but we do a lot of paid impressions on Facebook. So here you're going to see just kind of an overview on impressions, how many people we reached, how many link clicks. I noticed that from 2017 to 2018, we more than tripled the amount of engagement in our Facebook posts and in our paid ads, which I think shows that we're gaining traction in what we're doing on Facebook advertising. We also work with a media agency called Media Minefield, and they place me quarterly on television to promote the community in different ways. So once those placements happen, they often get picked up online, or they rerun during other coverages on a TV station. So in 2018, we ended up with 18 placements with over 56 million viewers and a $13 million publicity value. And that's just one placement per quarter during the year, and oftentimes it's to promote something like the Edina Art Fair, or I've been on television promoting different things during the holiday season, like Thanksgiving cooking gadgets, the Edina Fall Into the Arts Festival. Sometimes they're in market, sometimes they're out of market. When they're out of market, there needs to be a connection back to that community. So I'll give an example. Recently, I was in Madison, Wisconsin, because the Edina Art Fair does attract artists regionally, and even from as far away as Canada and California, I believe. But when there's a connection back to that community, and then stations are interested in having me on TV to talk about it, because it affects their community as well, and it gives their artists a chance to be talked about in the local media. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Questions for Ms. Loberg so far?
Okay.
Good. So,
One,
Yes.
Member Brindle.
one thing that just occurred to me. So this was a big year in high school championships, state championships.
Sure.
And the Minnesota State High School Hockey Championship tournament is watched all over. It's one of these that is done well. The hockey is good here.
Yep.
And people watch it from all over. So when Edina has a very visible role in that, is they did this year with both the boys and the girls. It just occurred to me now, I wonder if that would drive people to the City of Edina website or Explore Edina website, and if that would, I don't
It's
know,
absolutely possible.
Yeah, make people look where they wouldn't have thought to otherwise.
Yeah, and
But this
anytime,
has been a big year for tournaments.
Sure. On a greater scale, anytime there's a large event like the Super Bowl or the Ryder Cup or the Final Four, we certainly see business trickle in because we're a first-ring suburb, and it affects the retail, it affects our hotel occupancy. But certainly something like the state tournament, and it's good for us to look at those sports opportunities, even with the professional teams. It doesn't always align with the female demographic that I'm trying to reach, but I think as we grow and our budget grows, we can look at reaching leisure visitors in different ways, and sporting events can be a big part of that. There's also I just want to mention, we had a 4th annual Style Edina. We had a great, I think really the best year ever. We had phenomenal feedback from both attendees, and our retail community really does appreciate the event. I know you all know that retail is changing. Retail is struggling in some areas, and anytime we can talk about the phenomenal retail environment that we have here and just brag about what an awesome community this is and a place to shop, I think that we should do that as often as we can. There's also an overview about exploreedina.com. So this just tells you how many visits we had. And the top things that are driving the visits are those articles that I talked about. If you go onto the Explore Edina website, if you're interested in reading them, they fall under what I call the Experiences tab, and so they're called Edina Experiences, and you can go on and read each one of those. When they're not being promoted online, they still exist as content on my website. Let's see. The top states for the website are definitely Minnesota, this area, but Rochester, St. Cloud, Duluth, Mankato, we get hits from all of those areas. And then Wisconsin is really, especially that western Wisconsin area, Eau Claire and Madison are our top drivers of website traffic. And then we also get quite a bit of Iowa, and I'm seeing Illinois show up again and again, and that's going to make me take a closer look at targeting the Chicago area. Because I think there's a lot of friends and family visitation that goes back and forth between the Chicago market and here, and we can certainly capitalize on that as well.
A lot of business.
The following slides are just examples of digital and print ads. And again, if you ever have any questions, my door is always open. I love to talk about my job and about promoting this great city, and I thank you for your time.
Good, thanks, Ms. Loberg. Questions for Ms. Loberg on her presentation or comments? Member Fisher?
It's not so much question. I really like where you've focused, and not that I'm any expert in this, but when you think about retail, so if you're thinking about what's unique about Edina, many communities have retail, but we have retail that's high in experience quality.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think the ability to sell that, to promote that, we can get great photos of this environment. I think we're so close to it. We see retail struggling, and it is, but it's struggling in every community.
It sure is.
And so
yeah.
the dual benefit we get when I see how you're promoting these ads is not only convincing people to come to our community, which results in hotel stays, but it's also helping our retail community in a sort of, so it's kind of a two-sided approach.
Right.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research done through Explore Minnesota Tourism in our metro area partners. We're in a cooperative called the Metro Tourism Group, and that's where a bunch of us bureaus get together and we pool. Everybody pools a little bit of their money, and we promote the greater Twin Cities area. And the University of Minnesota has a tourism office, and they've conducted a lot of research. And oftentimes, shopping is the #1 activity of a visitor from out of market. So the fact that we don't have sales tax on clothing here is that's a big sell for the Mall of America and any retail entity in the state of Minnesota.
And my only other point would be to Councilmember Brindle's comment, which is actually a really creative comment. Everybody in Minnesota is watching the state, high school hockey tournaments, and the only problem is they're not having a warm, fuzzy feeling about Edina.
That's true.
During those tournaments, typically
and I only
not
say that
loving
because
Edina.
I live in Egan and I had a son that played hockey. So,
but you could turn that on its head, and you could offer, bring your ticket stub if you're from any of the schools that we trounced. You can. You bring your ticket stub,
it, right?
and you can get 15% off at any Edina retailer or hotel. You can play with it. So
unintended circumstances are just like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Second.
You're a marketing genius. We never even knew
I'm going to give you a call, Mike.
Okay, well, thank you. And Councilmember Fisher, thank you for your comments on retail. It really reflects back at the beginning of Explore Edina why we decided to focus on retail initially. And that was because Edina has a very interesting combination of retail experiences. 50th in France is different from Southdale, is different from Galleria, and we really don't have many communities in Minnesota that offer that holistic type of experience. So that also leads into our discussion on well-being destination. While we knew that retail was going to be our initial focus, we also wanted to make sure that we really took a look at the community as a whole and some of our other very important assets that we have here in addition to retail. And we had suspected, just from what we knew with Explore and the Chamber, that we had a large number of medical and well-being assets in the community, and that maybe we should take a look at that in the future for one of our areas of focus. And we did work with Future IQ and a couple of other companies that dug deeper into the data analysis and showed us that we have assets here that we didn't even know existed. And while people have been coming here for medical services and well-being services for many years, for decades, there really hasn't been a way to bring everybody to the table and market and let everybody know about those services holistically. So we decided to step up to the plate and take a look at well-being as our next area of focus. And when we say well-being, we don't just want to focus on medical. And if I can tell you just a very quick story, some of you have heard this. I was in Original Pancake House, and one of the employees came up to me and said, I know that you're president of the chamber. Would you have a minute to talk to this couple from Rochester? They have some questions on shopping. So I went up to them, introduced myself. We had a great conversation, and I asked what brought them to Edina. And they said they were actually here for their physical examinations. And I literally laughed out loud. And I said, so you're from Rochester and you came here? And the wife said, yes, the only reason people come to Rochester is because they're sick. Now, Mayo would never want you to think that, and they've worked really hard to kind of get people out of that mindset. But the reality is when a lot of people mention Mayo Clinic, they're like, oh, you're going to Mayo? It must be really bad. And the first thing that came to my mind was, we don't want people to come to Edina because they're sick. We want them to come to Edina to be well. And it encompasses so much more than just the medical treatment providers that we have here. It's chiropractic, it's our massage therapy, there's so much involved in that. I mean, it's spas, it's experiences. So we have decided to focus on the well-being aspect as another value proposition that the community could promote to outsiders and to people right here in Edina. In doing that, we wanted to make sure that whatever path that we went down, it complemented Vision Edina as well as the Southdale Small Area Work Group Plan. We don't want, whether it's the chamber or whether it's Explore Edina, we don't want to be going off on our own and doing our own thing. We can be much more successful if we collaborate with other entities in the city and make sure that we're kind of all going down the same path. We can certainly get a bigger bang for Explore's buck and a bigger bang for everything that the community is doing to promote themselves as well. So you'll see when you look at some of our plans going forward, echoes of some of the verbiage and some of the goals of Vision Edina, as well as the Southdale Small Area Plan. And I think we were very effective in doing that. And when we brought our initial steering committee together a little more than 18 months ago, we had 12 people at the table. And it was a gentleman, senior vice president from Blue Cross Blue Shield, who made a comment, and he said, Lori, this is a very energetic and it's a very large endeavor here. It's going to be challenging. But if you want our backing, and if you want the backing from everybody here at the table, and that was Fairview, Twin Cities Orthopedics, developers, we don't want this just to be about driving revenue to the medical providers. And it kind of took me aback a little bit, and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting coming from some of the people who are at the table. But the comment at the end of the day was, let's take a poll of the 13 people around the table here. How many of you live in the city of Edina? 11 of the 13 live in Edina. And for them, it was personal. It wasn't just business. And they said, we're going to be behind you, but it has to be about driving the economic wheel of the entire community. So again, as you see our plans going forward, you'll find that in promoting the well-being destination, we're also promoting retail. We're also promoting hospitality. When you look at what Mayo's trying to do in Rochester, they have one entity, and they're really trying to build a structure to support that entity. You look at Edina, and we're very different in that it's not just about one individual company, it's many, it's a collaborative, and we already have the structure built around it. So for us, it's just a matter of bringing attention and wrapping it up with a nice bow on it to show everybody what we have here and not just well-being. So that gives you, again, a little bit of an overview of what we're trying to do there. Many people ask me, so what do you mean when you're talking well-being destination? What is that? And the easiest formula that I can give you that kind of brings it down to its lowest denominator is this formula of lifestyle plus economic development. So on the lifestyle side, and if we take a look at the next slide here, we're going to be talking about programming. How do you educate the community to live a happier, healthy life? And it's not just diabetes education or cardiac care. It's how do you find purpose in life? What about art in the community? How do you become more engaged in your community? It's that holistic well-being and not just medical services. So we're going to be bringing a lot of that lifestyle programming to our well-being destination project. And then, of course, you also have the economic development component. We're looking at bringing an incubator, a startup incubator to the community. We've had amazing discussions with developers and other large businesses who want to partner with us on this endeavor. We're looking at filling some of the gaps here. Who else can we bring into the community that will round out our destination? That's a whole economic development perspective. And then that last point there really talks about community engagement, and that's creating a one-stop shop for residents, for visitors, to learn about all of the well-being activities that are going on here, whether it be continuing education classes at Edina Public Schools, whether it's art classes, whether it's education classes at Fairview. It will be a one-stop shop for all of these types of activities. And it will help us track engagement. So when we work with a Fairview or Twin Cities Orthopedics, we'll be able to go back and track some of the usage on the website so they understand how we're feeding how we're feeding patients and visitors to those entities. So it will be all inclusive. And then the last slide that we have here really talks about our big project for 2020 will be taking all of these ideas and putting them into one plan that, as I said earlier, not only drives the well-being entities and the visitors to those places, but really drives the whole economic wheel of the community in regards to retail, hospitality, and other services in our community. So there's a lot there. I welcome all of you to touch base with me. I'd love to sit down and meet with you or anyone in the community and really help you understand what we're trying to do at a deeper level. But thank you so much for allowing us to be here this evening. If you have any questions, Shelley or I would be happy to answer those.
Yes. Member Staunton.
So thank you both for the presentation and for your hard work on behalf of the community. I can't help but see the overlap between what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about it with something that I've been talking about, I think, since I arrived on the council, and that's this notion of we have in our community all of these great organizations that promote and facilitate all kinds of great things, whether that be the Chamber of Commerce or Explore Edina or the Rotary or the Edina Community Foundation or the Community Education, Park and Rec, and they're all fractured in different ways, and we don't have a good one front door, I call it, to really attract people. And it strikes me that the things that you're talking about are exactly the kinds of things that we need. It was one place that will help facilitate what people in this community want to know is going on, but also attract people from the greater region to our community for things that might be going on. Maybe it's, to the well-being point, maybe it's some kind of activity or conference or lecture or something that would attract people from around the region who then maybe also use various retail outlets and other facilities. So we have been having a conversation coincidentally, and I talked with Ms. Loberg about this, about a community center in our city and the need for it, and we kind of keep going around in circles about how to make something happen. And I think the time has come for us to really focus on what a community center could do for us, and I would invite you to be part of that conversation. I understand you have limitations in terms of the constituencies you serve and the legal limitations on what you can spend money that's raised for Explore Edina, but it seems to me the way you're thinking about this is indispensable to the way we ought to think about this as a community as we move toward figuring out a single front door for all the great things about our community and how we can all pull in the same direction with these people who are putting so much effort into making the community a better place. And so I would invite you to think about that as you're moving forward and collaborate with us as we're moving forward.
We would be delighted to do that. And I've had a couple of conversations with other organizations within the community, and we want to make it very clear that we're not taking anything away from those organizations. But as you said, we're the front door, and then everything streams into their organization as well. So it's really just another avenue to highlight what they're doing. And we would be delighted to serve in any capacity because it helps us in our planning phase as to what we need to have this portal look like in order to best serve the community.
Right. It is anything but a zero-sum game. This is, we'll all be better if we're working together on this.
Exactly.
Agree.
Well, I think all of us up here who know Ms. Severson and Ms. Loberg know what a wonderful job they do for our community. And now folks at home get to see that as well, just by virtue of your presentations this evening. So thanks as Member Sutton said, thanks for the good work you're doing, the great work you're doing on behalf of Edina.
Thank you.
And keep it up, and we look forward to taking it to the next level.
Yeah, thank you.
My
So do we.
pleasure.
Good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got one other matter in the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda, and Manager Neal is going to introduce the topic, which has to do with the fire department and fire ops training and the event that was held recently.
Stalled long enough for them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think they've saved a couple of lives even as they've been waiting here. But I see Mr. Vadnais approaching the microphone. Scott works in our fire department, and he's going to talk to us a little bit tonight. I think it's a special invitation maybe coming your way, and he's going to talk a little bit about that opportunity for you. Mr. Vadnais.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Scott Vadnais. I'm a lieutenant with the Edina Fire Department, and I'm also the president of Edina Local 1275, a labor organization that represents fire lieutenants, fire inspectors, and firefighter paramedics within the fire department. Last year, we had our annual State of Association of Fire Department Locals have their convention here in Edina, and with that, we started off a program called Fire Ops 101. And a couple of the members that are here today took part in that, and we felt it was such a great success that we're going to continue it annually. And so I'm here to invite you guys again to come back out to Fire Ops 101 and just see what it's basically like to do our job, and to get kind of the decision makers the background on what it takes to be a firefighter. And I think we do a very good job of it. It was a great success last year, and I would love to see every one of you at it this year. I know it's September 22nd. I know it's a busy day for the city with the open streets, but we'll start early in the morning, and we'll get you out the door so you can attend the open streets if that's what you're going to do, and we'll even feed you a good meal at the end of the day before you go out. So I can answer any questions if you have any, or if anybody else.
Any questions for Mr. Vadnais? No. Thank you for the invitation, by the way.
Thank you.
Member Fisher.
Yeah, for those of you that weren't there, highly recommend this experience. It's really good. Now, are you inviting council members from other cities?
We are not. Originally, we were going to do that. What we're trying to do is kind of hit our council and our decision makers. We've invited a couple of our state representatives also that are from the area. And then as we kind of grow it, we'll expand out.
Okay. And for those of us that have successfully done some of these exercises, do we come in at a higher officer level?
Totally.
So let's say if they were a rookie, can we treat them like a rookie?
Totally, absolutely. Okay. I can't give you a different color helmet, or a different color gift.
I don't have anyone particular in mind.
He's actually talking about the mayor, not you.
But I would like to, in all seriousness.
He was looking at Manager Neal, but talking about me is that what you're saying?
In all seriousness, there was a lot that we learned that day, and today I was walking in the office building that we office in, coming up the stairwell, and there's a restaurant in our building, and for some reason they keep putting a chair into this stairwell, and it just angered me so much, and partly because, well, I'm an architect, so I know better. You shouldn't put a chair in a stairwell, but I literally was visualizing the smoke-filled room exercise where we had to find somebody, and you realize what a challenge that is for firefighters if they're in a stairwell that they expect to be a stairwell and there would be a chair in there. So gave me a whole different perspective, really, from the firefighter angle. So it was quite valuable. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right. Now, hold on. I think Member Fisher wanted to give you some marketing advice, too.
We'll get out of here quick.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen, for being here. And now we're going to move on to the public hearing portion of the agenda. We have one public hearing matter in front of us this evening, and Director Teague has this, and it's a revised PUD 14 and site improvement plan agreement for potential passage. And This is a project we previously approved in a different way, and they're coming back with some modifications on it. Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this property is located in the Greater Southdale District. It's the old Guitar Center site located on Hazelden Road and along the promenade. There's a look at the existing building today. So back in 2018, the Council and Planning Commission granted preliminary approval of this project that included 186 units, 19 stories tall, 298 parking stalls. That was in March and April. The applicant came back later that year in October to the City Council for final approval. What they did was reduce the number of units within the building, essentially made some of the units larger. Everything else about the project was the same at preliminary. So what their request is today is to go back closer now to that preliminary approval. So the plan before you is to go to 185 units, but 18 stories. So they would take 1 story off and reduce parking down to 277 stalls. So what this request requires is a zoning ordinance amendment. The revision to that PUD 14 zoning district that we created for this site. Also, as part of this, we're updating the site improvement plan agreement to change some of the numbers. The affordable housing number goes up with the increase in the number of units. So the proposal, it's really, again, essentially the same project, just with an increase in units. All the building materials, the footprint, the site plans, all identical to what was originally approved. So as you can see, kind of the side-by-side comparison. Essentially the same project, hardly noticeable the changes. So again, all the building material the same with the brick and metal panels. Again, the site plan, exactly the same. So this graphic just indicates the zoning ordinance changes, pretty simple, just reducing the height by 10 feet, the 1 story. There was with the floor area ratio, we calculated in parking, so we're going to correct that this go around. So it's at 4.6. And the parking stall, again, reduced. So the number of stalls per unit reduces from 1.55 to 1.5. Actually, the number of parking stalls provided in this project compared to some of our other housing projects, this is still a little bit on the high end. So primary issue, are the proposed amendments reasonable to justify the zoning ordinance amendment? Staff and Planning Commission believe that it is. The Planning Commission vote was unanimous. Again, it's just reducing the story by 1. Number of units, essentially the same from what you approved at preliminary rezoning. We did have SPAC Consulting take a look at the parking to see if there might be an issue with the reduction in stalls. And they've provided that memo that was included in your packet where they conclude that the parking that's proposed here is still adequate. So with that, staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval of both the resolution that would approve the revised site plan, again, it's essentially the same, the site plan agreement, and the ordinance amendment with those changes. If the council is comfortable, we would recommend that you waive second reading of the ordinance amendment. With that, I can stand for questions.
Questions for Director Teague at this point in time? Yeah, that was a very effective summary. Thank you. Stand by. I'm going to have the applicant come up. I think you talked to Mr. Lund and Mr. Jacques about 10 minutes or so?
Correct.
For their presentation. Gentlemen?
Good evening. My name is Trace Jacques. I represent Elma Swenson Graham Architects in Minneapolis, 500 Washington Avenue South, Minneapolis, 55415. Kerry pretty much said everything that I was going to say, so he kind of stole my thunder here. But essentially, we're here not as a design change, but really as a change of numbers. And Tom can speak to this better than I can, but it's really a move that was made because of the economics of building this type of building. This is a very expensive building to build. Getting capital, getting all of that aligned properly requires certain quotients, and one of the most important quotients is dollars per unit. And this is why the number went back up and the overall area went down. It makes the project more affordable and more, it makes it possible to capture the dollars needed for construction, basically. Tom, again, can speak more directly to that question, but all I really had to show was basically, like I said, the number of units changed, the overall floor area ratio actually got a little better. Parking did go down a bit. Our number of bedrooms, and this is from the original unit that was done in April of last year, we literally lost a few bedrooms. So when you take the bedroom to car ratio, it's actually works in our favor a little bit there. And then this is really the side-by-side before and after. And basically we took one floor out, you can call it the 6th or the 7th floor, and added a unit to each floor. So thus making the units smaller. But the unit count basically went back to where we were when we originally got approval from this body. So with that, if Tom wants to add, he may. Otherwise, I'm available for any questions.
Sure. Well, let's hold for a minute until we hear from Mr. Lund. And both of you can stand for questions if there are any.
My name is Tom Lund. I'm with Lund Real Estate Partners. Edina resident.
And your business address, Mr. Lund?
5319 Oaklawn Avenue, Edina.
Thank you.
I'm here because I guess my parents watched this. A couple of days ago, they told me that I looked really good on TV, so I didn't know they watched these meetings. Anyway, I'm just here to say that the project has taken many twists and turns. It's been very challenging. $100 million projects are, as it turns out, in Minneapolis, St. Paul area are very hard to finance, especially when they're one of a kind. And this is a one of a kind project. Hasn't been done in the suburbs anywhere. And so we thought we had exactly the right product for the financial markets and the debt and equity markets, and we were off just by a smidge. And so that's why we're back here. We went back into the market early this year, and we're successful in raising the required equity to move forward with this project. So that's why we're here. I don't mean to waste anybody's time, but I appreciate any support and all the support that you've given us over the past almost a year and a half. So thank you.
Good. Thanks, Mr. Lund. Anyone on the council have a question for either Mr. Lund or Mr. Jacques? Okay. Member Brindle?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, good evening.
Hi.
I love this project. It's beautiful. It fits the area. It's going to be a great building to embrace the promenade. So it's 100% rental, right? And I can't remember if I asked this question before, but I'll take the risk of asking it now. And that is how would the finance numbers change? Because I haven't the vaguest idea if there were any of these units that were for sale units and then the rest of the units be rental units.
I've never done that, so I honestly don't know. You know, Carlisle and Grant Park and things like that I've been involved with, those are all pure condo, and the apartment buildings I've done have all been, I don't know the answer to that. We are looking at a project like that now, but it's very complicated as we're learning to do that. And I don't know that the banks, I don't think the banks would like it. We may be able to find equity, but I'm pretty sure the banks would not really like that.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions for, yes, Member Anderson.
Thank you. Good evening. Just as a matter of curiosity, if you're jumping to 185 units in your resubmission, what's the unit mix there? Bedrooms? How many twos? How many threes? Do you have ones in there?
We've got that, yes. We've got micros, which are along the promenade above the townhomes.
Okay.
We've got the townhomes. We've got one-bedroom dens, two bedrooms, two-bedroom dens, penthouses. So it's a very broad range. So
Okay.
We actually have, I'm sorry. We actually have the mix, the actual mix percentage-wise and number-wise at the end of the presentation if you'd like to see it, or we can submit it. The city has the information from this most recent submittal. So would you like to see it now, or?
I'd like to take a look, yes, thank you.
Okay, I hope I can find it. Okay. We came prepared, but some of the number pages are near the back, so. But this actually, just for what it's worth, it kind of walks you through the size of the units and the types of the units. So orange is one bedroom, blue is two bedroom. And then as you work your way up the tower. So this is the number page. So on the lower right is the unit distribution. By studio, alcove, one bedroom den, two bedroom den, townhome. The townhomes are the units directly adjacent to the promenade. And that's the total of each and the percentage underneath that for a total of 185.
Okay. Yeah. No three bedrooms. I guess that was really what I was trying to get to.
No, and that's actually part of that number change from last spring to last fall.
Yeah.
The thinking was that might be more desirable, but actually getting the money, it changed that formula I mentioned, the dollars per unit. And if we were in other markets, that dollar per unit figure would be more palatable to the equity folks, but not here yet. I think this will actually set a new bar, hopefully, for even more buildings of this character and quality, hopefully, here in Edina.
Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Stand by. This is a public hearing matter. I'm going to open it up for testimony from the public. If anyone wants to inquire about the project or testify regarding the proposed approvals, you're welcome to come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to testify. All right. Seeing no one coming forward, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I had a sidebar with Attorney Knutson and Director Teague. And if the council is so inclined, what we could do is, in a single motion, approve the zoning ordinance amendment and the resolution, and then come back and address the waiver of second reading, because that requires a 4/5 vote. So we could handle it in 2 steps if the council was so inclined. So we could entertain a motion to adopt the zoning ordinance amendment 2019-12. And then the PUD zoning district resolution 2019-57, which approves the revised final site plan as a single motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion second on the motion as stated with respect to proposed zoning ordinance amendment 2019-12 and resolution 2019-57. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Member Brindle.
So why wouldn't we do the ordinance by itself and just pass it second reading?
We could do it either way. It would. But just,
What are you
we,
saying? Doing second reading on a
do
different
them
meeting?
in 2 separate steps.
Yeah.
That way instead of 2 separate steps
It's going to
away.
be 2 separate steps anyway. So why don't we do the resolution, and then why don't we, as we do with other ordinance votes that we do,
Yeah, we can do it that way as well, which is a more traditional way that we've done it.
Yeah.
But are you talking about doing it all in one meeting tonight, or talking about a subsequent meeting?
No, it's just 2 votes.
She wants to waive the second reading.
All right.
Or that's her notion.
it's just 2 votes. You have to do 2 votes one way or the other.
Yeah, well,
So-
we've already got a motion and a second, the way we
Well,
stated it.
I know we do.
And then all we have to do is waive second reading with respect to the zoning ordinance amendment.
All right.
Okay.
We'll do it your way.
I know change is hard. All right, we got a motion and a second with respect to the ordinance and the resolution as stated. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then with respect to the proposed zoning ordinance amendment involving ordinance number 2019-12, we can handle that by waiving second reading and have an immediate approval on that. Is there a motion to waive second reading on that particular matter?
So moved.
Second.
A motion second to waive second reading on ordinance number 2019-12. Any further discussion? All those in favor of waiving second reading on the stated ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Mr. Mayor, could I?
Yes.
So this is an excellent project. It always has been, and we hope you get all the financial stuff worked out. I'm just curious, the presentation you did tonight, I don't recall seeing that necessarily in our packet. Was this something different?
Yes. That was the presentation they made to the Planning Commission, updated.
Okay, but I didn't.
It was not in your packet.
Okay. Is it possible for us to get that? Some of those, I mean, we had plenty of information in our packet, but I'd like to go through that presentation a little bit, just for myself, just to see it.
Sure, and we will attach it to tonight's agenda as it was introduced as part of the presentation.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, good. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be good for all of us to have. I was curious about some of the elevations as we went through it too. I think it'd be fun to look at it again. And Member Anderson, of course, wasn't here when we voted on it the first time, but it is a first-rate project and really proud to have it in our community and grateful for you continuing to work on it, Mr. Lund and Mr. Jacques, your great architecture, and thanks for putting this together. Look forward to seeing it emerge out of the ground. All right, very good. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we are on now to reports and recommendations, and we have one matter in this portion of the agenda this evening as well, and that is a sketch plan review for a potential project, I'll call it, over on Hankerson Avenue and 52nd Street, and
Your Honor.
Director Teague has this matter as well, and I'm going to turn to Member Anderson. I know he has something he wants to address with us because of the nature of who the applicant is.
I do, and due to a close familial relationship, I'll recuse myself from this conversation.
Right. All right. Very good. Thank you, Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this sketch plan, this property is located up in the Grandview District on the north side of Vernon. What they're proposing to do here is tear down, there's an existing little 4-unit apartment building and a single-family home, and they would reconstruct 18 units there. This site is guided in our comprehensive plan for low-density attached residential at a maximum of 8 units per acre, both in the existing comprehensive plan and the draft plan that's out for review with our adjacent communities. So this request would require a comprehensive plan amendment to re-guide this site to medium density, which would allow up to 20 units an acre. A rezoning would also be required. This property is currently zoned R1 single family. So a couple of options for the rezoning. It could be PUD or it could be PRD4 with some variances. And as noted in your staff report, there are a number of setbacks that are not satisfied here. So with that, I will introduce Steve Benke from Donnay Homes, who will introduce the project.
Very good.
Good evening, council, members of the commission.
Yes, Mr. Benke, welcome.
I'm with Donnay Homes, and our address is 9655 63rd Avenue North, Maple Grove. However, the owner, Paul Donnay, is an Edina resident, as are the other applicants, McDonough.
Steve, Mr. Mayor, council members, Paul Donnay, 6605.
Yes, thank you for introducing yourself.
6605 Mohawk Trail.
All right, very good.
One little correction from the introduction. There are 12 units here, but it is 18 units an acre. And I think that is a little
Okay,
clarification.
let's
that we needed.
finish your introductions, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Benke.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth McDonough, 5132 Hankerson Avenue, and I'm here with my husband Peter, who resides at 5132 Hankerson Avenue. We are the Kestrel Design Group, and we've partnered with Danae Homes. We need to retire our fourplex, and we started looking at this about 10 years ago because we knew this was coming. We did a major remodel when we purchased the building in about 98. We purchased in 95. And unfortunately, I think I'd be about 125 years old if we did another major remodel of the 4-unit before we got any return on our investment. And that's, of course, happening all over Edina. So we started thinking about what can this site be and what does the neighborhood need. We've lived in the neighborhood since we moved here in 95. So we've envisioned something that we want to show you tonight. And we attended actually an open house that Danae had done on 49th Street, which is a beautiful, side-by-side twin home. And that's where I first became aware of their work. Kestrel specializes in stormwater and stormwater solutions, and Danae specializes in homes. They're the largest family-owned home builder in Minnesota and has done many examples in Edina and lots of townhomes. So we feel it's a good match. And I guess I'll step down now and let Steve and Peter talk a little bit about what we are thinking about that this site could support.
Very good. Thank you for your opening comments.
Thank you, council members. Thank you, Mayor, and various department directors. So this has gone through some iterations over time, and at one point there was another developer had approached us about doing a multi-unit apartment building. We just don't know that we don't believe that that's a fit. We do believe that this is a fit. We did present a planning commission, and they were very positive about this project, so we're hoping to continue in that vein. So it's at the corner of Hankerson Avenue and 52nd Street. We're proposing 12 townhomes and a pocket park or a small neighborhood park. There is no park within the neighborhood without crossing either Vernon or Interlaken. And it's in a right-of-way adjacent to the Wells Fargo Bank. Again, we went through the introductions. The Grandview District, it's a very urban, commercial, or it's suburban urban. Commercial traffic, there's transit availability there. There's a bus stop right outside of where the fourplex currently is on Vernon. It's an excellent high walkability community, and it has a very good density for there, and we want to continue on with that. Site design, I'll talk about the urban commercial buffer that the townhomes would provide, the small park that we're proposing at townhomes, landscape, stormwater, and Steve will talk about the architectural design. We get a little further into it. So I'm not sure that I can, okay, here's the cursor. So we're looking at Vernon Avenue here, and this is Sherwood. This is, I'm going to start at the north end and work south. The stars indicate apartment or condominiums, apartment buildings, larger buildings. So this is the Hawthorne condominiums and the 5 villas just on this side of Vernon. Moving down to the former Victorson apartments. I think there's 16 of them. Then there's the Summit, 5 townhomes, and then the Summit co-op, which is about 20-something units. And then as we move further down, we have of course, the new Avador apartments. Over here, we have Grandview Square, and again, continuing on, we have some twin homes here. We have multiple twin homes on Grandview. This is Vernon Terrace, the over 55 senior living. We have the villas, Highland Villas. Down here we have Vernon Oaks, and then Interlochen Court. And if you look at this this map, and this is single family over here, there's a gap, and in the aerial photos that I show you, it'll become a little bit more apparent how this part of the neighborhood really connects more with, excuse me, the cursor's not working, okay, with the Wells Fargo parking lot, Jerry's parking lot, and then the Vernon Terrace parking lot. So there's a kind of a gap here where 52nd meets Hankerson. And as I mentioned earlier, there are no parks within this part of the Grandview neighborhood. So that's on this side of Vernon and south of Interlochen. So all of these houses either have to cross the street over to Todd Park or cross Vernon over to Sherwood Park. And so what we're suggesting is that there be a small little pocket park here on an existing piece of land. And I'll get to that in a moment. So here's the intersection of 52nd and Hankerson Avenue. Here's the alleyway. This is north is up that runs behind these two parcels that we're suggesting become one with 12 townhomes. And this is that piece of land which the county uses as, or is part as a right-of-way, but currently there's a small wall here. There's multiple piers that have been built up as part of the district, the commercial district. And there's a number of green ash trees, which eventually will all get emerald ash borer, unfortunately. So we'd like to change that, put a park here, or make this a park, dedicate this as a park and make this a playground area. These are some points about across from Vernon Avenue, Jerry's Supermarket, the parking lot and the supermarket. I went through the location. It's about 2/3 of an acre, and it currently is a fourplex apartment, single family home. Here's the survey of the parcel, more detail than you would like to see, but here's Hankerson, and just off the plan here is where Vernon runs at a slight angle. Here's the alleyway, and then this is 52nd Street. And this is a site plan indicating what we'd have in mind. Steve will go through this later, but essentially a screen here, vegetation screen, vegetation on screen on the 52nd side, and then all of these trees here are fed by water running off the roof. So stormwater is being managed for the 90% storm, so 1.1 inch, 24-hour storm will stay on the site, and we envision a French drain swale running all the way along the back from east to west, and then running down here along the side, and then parking in the front, and then the park would be across the street on Hankerson Avenue. Again, as a close-up, there's the site. Here's where we're suggesting the park would be. Sorry about the quality of the graphics here, but we're building on the existing piers that run along Vernon Avenue, repeating them here. The fencing that you see across from on Jerry's, the same type of benches, the same type of landscape structures type park equipment that you see over at Sherwood Terrace, or Sherwood Park, excuse me. Then some kind of a crossing here, and this is the corner of the property. So the same type of structure is what we're looking at here, something that this neighborhood does not have. And I will leave it there, and I will pass this off to Steve, and he's going to take you through.
Very good. As I pointed out in the initial review, 18 units is actually 18 units per acre. There are 12 units planned currently. The building, what we're looking at doing is creating a building with some texture to it, We are bringing the end units down to a lower level than some of the middle units. They are mostly 3-story buildings from the street side. We are planning garages onto Hankerson, mainly because of grade issues on site. There's about 8 feet of grade from the alley in the northwest corner to the corner of Hankerson and 52nd. We looked extensively at trying to utilize the alley for the parking for the buildings, but essentially that would have put a living level below garage grade or a basement facing Hankerson, neither of which seemed to really address Hankerson in an appropriate manner. We do see it as a transition between the current single-family area and the commercial. As Peter pointed out, we do see an edge along Vernon with the building sizes. We do see this as closing a gap in the current Vernon area. Some of those aerials are also shown in the package that you received from Planning Commission. I've been told that most of you have seen the presentation of Planning Commission as well. Essentially, as you come down Vernon, you have a commercial edge along the west side, which is outside technically of the Grandview small area plan, but I think as we're all aware, the zoning really doesn't change in the middle of the street. So what we're proposing here is a little higher density, but we're trying to provide a filler to that edge, a filler to the gap and then provide some protection for the single family beyond it to the west. And again, you see how the edge of Grandview basically comes right along the edge of this area. The building that Peter and Elizabeth had referred to is a duplex that we built on the just in from 49th and France. Very successful. Another 3-story building. It is a little higher price point than what we were talking about here, mainly because it's a larger building. It was more of a double garage, more conventional, facing the street. 3 bedrooms, 3 stories, the same kind of structure as that is what we're planning here, but we're looking at more of a smaller building, a little smaller footprint unit-wise, but a building that still is very significant along this area because of what we're trying to do with it. We do see the density in this area as being a positive from the standpoint of helping the densification of Grandview. We are continuing, obviously, to do that, the apartment construction, the other work that's happening in that area. We do see it with the Grandview small area plan and some of the transportation goals that you have for that area, that adding density to that area can help as well in terms of supporting the mass transit and having the residential density that will help this retail area flourish. We also saw the addition of the multifamily in this area as helping the mixed-use character of the Grandview area as well. Obviously, there isn't, outside of the duplexes in the area, there isn't a lot of other townhomes right in this area, but with the current redevelopment going on in Edina, and obviously we've been part of that for a number of years. I think we're looking at 12 or 13 years where we've been redeveloping in Edina, and from what we understand, the 800 or so permits that have been pulled in that period, 10% of them have been ours. You know, we do feel like we know the area well. We do feel like we're contributing, and we're looking for some encouragement from council about how this possibly could fit in that area. I think at this point we'll stand for questions.
Okay.
And we'll go from there.
Yeah, Member Brindle is going to start out for us. Quick question for you, though, while she's getting ready. Are the garages tandem, or is it so you can get 2 vehicles in there?
Right. We were planning for tandems. Obviously, these are for sale units, not rentals. We do feel that a lot of people will choose that. We do have the ability to change some of that square footage to living space if needed. But we do see with the changing of the auto industry, basically we feel like we're on the cusp of a major change. You know, we could see people just wanting one-car garage or maybe none. I mean, we do feel like people will want a garage for storage, things, bikes, other things like that, of course. But we are planning them as tandems. I think as the background pointed out, we are planning, Peter and Liz would like to plan for electric car chargers in each garage so that that kind of product can be covered.
All right, Mr. Benke, Member Brindle's going to ask you some questions.
I have a couple things, but I'll start with the north setback. So our city code calls for 35 feet, and you're asking for a 6-foot setback on that north side.
Right.
So talk to me about that, because directly to the north, obviously, it's a single-family home. That home, I believe, as I looked at it today, it's set very far north on its lot. So
Correct.
there is space there, but that doesn't really forgive you or give you permission to reduce your setback by this much. So talk to me about how you think that's going to work. Because if that house is torn down
Right.
and replaced, rebuilt, it could be centered on that lot, and it could be therefore much closer to this. So looking at what could happen in the
Right.
future.
What also could happen is that, just as here we pulled a couple lots together, we could have multiple lots put together up there as well and increase the townhomes going to the north. That's as much a possibility as the scenario you just brought out. I think the key is that this area, those setbacks hearken to a different era currently. They are currently the ordinance, they're currently code. I think that as some of these areas become more dense, that you are going to see setbacks like that reduced. We're essentially asking for that here because this is a different kind of product. And this
Okay.
is something that's going to be, we feel it's going to encourage development like this in the area. And again, it's the first one in the area.
Sure.
So.
Understood. I like the project very much. So that's one thing that stood out for me. Another is the amount of hard space that is not green compared with what is there today.
Sure.
And I understand that there's the French drain and there's the rain garden and there are things that obviously you are, as engineers in that field, able to understand with your business, and I appreciate that. That's terrific, because that'll be an aid to how this property gets developed in the wisest manner from a water perspective.
Right.
And we have more water, and we will have more water. It's not going backwards, and we do know that. But I am concerned about the limited green space. Do you need all that space to do this?
We're looking at the density as being part of the project. We do believe that the skills that Kestrel brings to the project is going to allow the project to outperform other projects that have been proposed. And I think that's the reason that you're seeing the hard cover as a
Okay.
significant upgrade to what
Fair enough.
is normally approved.
Okay.
I think by proactively managing on site instead of simply allowing it to drain off, by going above and beyond in terms of the site development, I think that's what we're looking for as an offset to that larger hardscape.
Okay. We do also know that high-density development is environmentally superior to single-family homes because you just have, you're able to share resources and spread costs for those resources, whereas single-family homes absorb all that individually.
Right.
So we do know that. Okay, so as far as, is this a good use for that property? Sure. Does it fit into the area? It is going to be the densest part of this area, but Maybe not with
No.
Vernon Terrace.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I take that back. But it is being on single-family home and adjacent to, you're probably going to set a trend. And this is an area, Todd Thorson mentioned it, he lives in the area. It's an area of very diverse homes.
Yep.
Some have been recently, and small lots, small houses, some larger lots,
Right.
some, it's really diverse.
Right.
And so we'll see, but I do like it. So I want to talk about the park.
Yes.
So, Scott, Manager Neal, is this a piece of property that is city property?
It is not.
County.
This is county property.
It's
So a
currently,
county easement on city property, is that what I heard at the planning commission?
County, or Mr. Teague, maybe you need to answer that question more precisely.
It is, I may have to look to Chad, is this state or is this county?
It's former MnDOT, isn't it?
We'd probably have to do the research on the plat and figure out exactly, but
We
it's a
do-
public agency.
It's a public
Yeah.
agency, but it's not city government. It's not city of Edina.
it currently shows as part of the right-of-way.
Yeah.
But it clearly is.
Right away of the Vernon.
Right.
Which
But
means it could be former MnDOT right away.
Correct.
Right.
But it clearly is excess in the sense of not being needed for the street right-of-ways.
Right.
The sidewalks.
Right.
So them being adjacent to it, neighbors, they live in in the single-family home on
Right.
the site. They're very aware of it, and it basically became their, hey, this is really something that could be an asset to this project as well. And while we're presenting it together, obviously there are two separate ideas here.
Okay, and therefore it would need different permissions.
Well, of course, because
Okay.
number one, you have to get the right-of-way available for use.
Access, yeah.
And that obviously is a whole nother set of meetings, discussions, and approvals.
Okay,
And we'd have to determine whether, if it's a county right-of-way, whether the county has fee title to it or just an easement.
okay, all
If
right.
it's just a limited easement, well, we couldn't build a park in an easement. We'd have to get title.
Okay,
And it would certainly be possible to approach the county, of course, as well.
yeah. Okay, so would this be a park that's for public use, or would it be a park that's for use of the townhomes?
They're seeing it, if it's feasible, they're seeing it as a public park.
Okay,
They're calling it a parklet, pocket park. It is obviously smaller than perhaps the normal park in Edina, but
Sure.
it would have definite use for the neighbors in that area. It does keep, you wouldn't, if you had a toddler and you're in Hankerson or you're, a block or two in, you could come here instead of having to cross Vernon. You could come here instead of having to go a longer distance up across Interlaken.
sure.
I mean, the key is there's nothing on this side.
Right.
So this is a method perhaps of providing one in what presumably is an obsolete piece of property.
All right. So, Manager Neal, would we recommend then that they work with Park and Rec in order to look at the safety regulations for a public park?
Certainly,
Okay.
especially in terms of how it's used, how it operates.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that was one thing that, looking long-term as to who's going to own it, who's going to maintain it, who's going to watch to make sure that that equipment, when it needs upgrade and replacement, or the matting
The ground surface,
on the ground itself, if it's for sure a tot lot, then it's going to have to be something that bounces, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So, okay, great.
And keep in mind, we are sort of looking at these as two separate but very related
Sure,
subjects.
understood. Let's see. So, would you show me the slide that shows the front face? Do you have one that shows the front face?
We had that in the planning commission package, and that's not part of this one is, do you have it, Peter?
No, but you have one.
Oh,
The first of the 5 that you did kind of shows it.
yeah, this is basically a mass model. Essentially, I'm trying to show here is that we are, not everything is 3 stories tall all the way across. We break it up. The building was not designed to be a monolith. It's contemplated as having more texture to the front of it than an apartment building, for example.
Okay, so that's really good to see because we had a box with lines. And so knowing
the plan, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and knowing, and this is a site plan review, this is not like
Agreed.
looking at materials and scale.
Right.
But knowing what the building looks like on 49th Street, knowing what the homes in our neighborhood look like, because I walk past your house. And it's a beautiful house, and there are other Donay homes in our neighborhood, and so that's what I wanted to see here. So, which brings me to front-facing garages, and one of the things that I think Donay does very well is if it has to have a front-facing garage, it's understated. So that is what I want to see here, because if the garage, because you've got a driveway up to a single door, then you've got a double driveway up to a double door,
Right.
2 singles.
Right.
And so sometimes you get a single and sometimes you got 2 singles.
Right.
Next to each other. And I'm just looking at just the perspectives of that and wanting to make sure that that's not what grabs you first.
I think you commented that you've seen that we are pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I want to take that as a compliment because I do most of the design work for our company. That is a goal of mine. It's something that in the homes that we've done in Edina and Southwest Minneapolis, our goal has never been to overwhelm the neighborhood. Some of the homes, I've had people walk by some of the homes we've done, and they don't realize that they were actually built that recently.
Sure.
And I think that is not necessarily achievable here, but it's definitely a goal to make it fit in as well as we can.
All right.
And again, the front-facing garage doors it's still a necessary evil in our culture these days. If I could have found a way to make the building make sense with the garages off the alley, it would be here in front of you. The slope just is really driving me away from it.
Okay. So currently, there's not a lot of traffic on Hankerson because people are going in and out of the alley.
Right.
More than they're going in and out of Hankerson.
There's actually a significant number of driveways to Hankerson as the farther north you go, but you're right, there's more of the traffic is back in the alley currently.
Okay.
I think Peter's commentary on that was that currently the alley is so narrow that if 2 cars meet, one of them has to back up the full length to get out.
Okay.
That isn't a reason why we would stay away from it. Obviously, an alley load still provides a better face to the street, but in this case, the best way of addressing the street was a single. And I've mixed up the single unit garages and the double garages. They sort of.
I like that.
There's a pattern to it, but it's bordering on random.
Yep, I like that. Okay, so 30-foot front setback, I can live with that. There are some varying setbacks on the block that can change. They're not that far off of 30 by my estimation.
Right.
And then a 25-foot rear yard setback. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're actually farther from the back from the alley than that, though. I think the back units are actually 41 feet from the alley. To the unit.
25. Okay.
The 25 on the planning commission package actually was measured to the plantings beyond the deck. So,
I see.
So we have a deck on the back. I mean, basically there's a backyard here that's away from Hankerson. And then beyond that, there were some plantings, there was a planting bed, and I'd noticed that some of the dimensioning wasn't actually going to physical structures.
Okay, so where's the rain garden that was talked about in the back?
It's in between the deck and the alley. It was actually deeper back toward the alley.
Okay.
Gardens are in the front where the trees are.
All right, so it's more of a swale that you're
In the
talking
back.
about back there? Okay.
In the front, the rain gardens are in the front by the trees.
All right, well,
Does it run all the way or just for?
is it a single swale all the way across, or does it?
Currently, it's shown, I think even the landscaping currently is no farther along than the concepts we have here. He is definitely showing it currently all the way along the back.
All right.
I don't think our final analysis would have something that linear.
Okay.
I think again too that the looking at the volumes that we're needing we'll be continuing to work on that as we move it forward.
All right. Well, generally, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
We will exceed holding capacity of the 1.1 inch 24-hour storm vent, so there'll be more than enough capacity.
Okay.
So it'll meet the B3 standard. That's the goal.
And it'll meet the standard.
It'll exceed the standard.
As far as the technical standard, and it'll be nice to have it look nice as well.
Yes, absolutely,
Yes.
without a doubt.
All right. I'm excited about this. For sale townhomes is something we're not seeing come in the door. And it's definitely a segment of residential that we want to see, because not everybody wants to rent. Mm-hmm. And so it also gives an option for folks in the neighborhood to stay in the neighborhood. Yeah. Because when they don't want the maintenance and they want to stick around because they've got everything around them, it's good. And then probably somebody else is going to talk about the access, the 52nd Street access, but I like that as well, to make it accessible to everything that's there.
Yeah, we think the opening of 52nd to Vernon, as in the transit study, the transportation study, is definitely an asset to the area as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a ways out yet, presumably, or it's next year. We'll see.
Great.
But we do see this, the density that this can add to the neighborhood as helping with that. It can give it a reason. It can give traffic an outlet. It can make the connection across to Jerry's much stronger. That's really sort of what we focused on right from the beginning, was how do we connect across to Grandview, since we're technically outside of the border.
Sure. Have you started working with neighbors at all?
I don't know that we have, Paul and I, and McDonough's haven't yet either, but obviously that's needed.
Yeah,
that's needed.
It's coming.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Member Staunton?
Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate the fact that it's sketch plan, and I appreciate that you didn't do all the fly specs. It's a concept, and you're looking for our feedback on it, so I won't go into a lot of detail about it. I think it's a terrific use in this spot to have townhomes, to have this level of density. You're really going from 5 units to 12 units. And it's a natural, as you make the transition from the core of the kind of commercial district that is the Grandview district into the neighborhood. It's a perfect transition, and I love seeing this kind of missing middle there. The things that I would ask you to think about as you're moving forward is some way to get the cars not coming in off of Hankerson. I know there was an extensive conversation about that at the Planning Commission. One suggestion I think that Commissioner Miranda made was the potential for accessing off of 52nd Street. I understand that creates some issues with how you're configuring the ownership and the townhome versus a condo, but I just think it's a hugely improved project if you can keep the cars coming in either from the alley or from 52nd Street, and maybe it allows you to even pull them more forward or not. I mean, I guess you just want to match the neighborhood.
Yeah.
The other thing is just, and the drawings that you've presented here that weren't at the Planning Commission, I think are helpful in showing that there's a transition to be made to the north, and you just want to be sensitive to that. I kind of agree with you. I think over time, this area is going to want to transition to more of this kind of townhome. We've seen it on 49th Street over in the 50th and France area. That whole block has turned to duplexes as time has gone on, and it's become a natural transition from the commercial district that's 50th and France to the residential district to the north. And I think the same thing is likely to happen here over time. And then the Wells Fargo building as well will be an interesting, this sets the table for whatever happens in the future, whatever that property owner decides they want to try and do.
Agreed. That is a higher and best use
Right.
issue waiting to happen, I think.
Right, and so then that gets to this slice that you're thinking about as a park, and that could fit in nicely, but there's all kinds of details to be sorted out on that. As far as the 52nd Street, the transportation plan does talk about that, but it talks about that in conjunction with a reconfiguration or rerouting of Eden, and so it's probably going to have to wait. I would think that the narrowing of Vernon is likely to happen before that, and the narrowing of Vernon will help make, it goes hand in hand with what you're talking about here, because then Vernon becomes easier to cross for pedestrians. It becomes a more valuable, Grandview and the commercial entities there become a more valuable asset for the folks who live in this neighborhood. I'm excited if you do this, that maybe then across from the new Avidor, we could create this same kind of feel facing the Avidor, where we ask them to put entry along that and create a new kind of residential street feel there. And so I think this kind of townhome thing is terrific in this spot, and I look forward to working on more details with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Fisher?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is sort of the missing middle kind of housing. I think it's a great location for this type of housing. A lot of the comments that have been made, I guess I would echo. I'm a little concerned about the driveways in the front. In the initial packet, I was kind of looking quickly, and I was just imagining they were on the back. I wasn't even, and I'm like, oh, I guess they are on the street. I appreciate that challenge. And I guess I was visualizing this as a much flatter site than what you're describing. So I got to go back there and look at that. But if there were a way to somehow, and I guess it would change the parameter. I didn't listen to the Planning Commission meeting in particular about this, but I don't know if there is such thing as a model where you can have these individual townhomes, but you have a sort of a public field of, not public, but they're a field of parking underneath that, isn't sort of articulated for each unit. Because then it feels like you could make that work off of 52nd in some way.
Right.
And then you would have this amazing opportunity to really treat the front of this in a way that...
As a front door, absolutely.
It would be a model that I think everyone would be looking at.
Right.
Going, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it does force you away from a fee simple townhome where you're actually on a lot and you're actually buying a home that's attached. It does force you into a condo situation because now you do have shared property, which is the garage. And
so so it forces some level of cooperation and communication forever because
it's a different level too. I mean, a townhome generally you have an association to maintain the building, and to have common services. Who's taking care of the roof, who's taking care of the garbage, who's taking care of the snow plowing, the yard mowing, and all that kind of stuff. When you get into a condo, you actually it's more of a communal living situation where you're tied together because you only own the inside of the unit, and then you would own a designated parking spot. And it doesn't allow you to own your lot, essentially. It's a different type of construction too. It is a more expensive type of construction. Not that these are inexpensive, but yet it does push you into a whole nother level. It's been discussed. I don't know that it's been eliminated, but it's moving that direction as a possibility. We do see a lot more of the homes on Hankerson having garages facing Hankerson, but most of them are, well, they're farther north. Some of them are homes that have been replaced. Some of them are homes that are existing. As a matter of fact, I think even the one that they're living in has the driveway beside it all the way. The garage is just behind the home or just beside. So there is precedent for driveways here.
It's not so much that there are garages. I mean, people have garages,
Correct.
people have driveways. It's the intensity of it in this stretch, right? I mean, so if you're walking down that sidewalk, all of a sudden it's driveway, and it just changes the feeling a little bit. And I don't know. In my mind, I'm thinking, a field of parking with one entrance. Well, there may be some elements of that construction that are more expensive. I think there are also some elements that, in my mind, I was thinking it might be close to a wash, but it's your business. You know it. It'd just be interesting to see what that possibility is. And what it could do to sort of the architecture on the front of this and all of that. But the only other thing is, you've got 12 units here. You're pretty much, very much up to the edge on the north side.
Right.
I'm not sure I have a huge problem with that, but I don't know if there's some magic to those 12 units versus, giving a little bit more breathing room. Because I'm just guessing that could be an issue in the neighborhood.
Tend to agree with you, and I think that's what we'll want to discuss with them.
But and then the other thing is on the whole idea of 52nd and the future crossing. I think that's going to be a really important thing for this area, and I'm hoping that it can. The street right now is not. It's coming at the wrong angle to Vernon, so somewhere along the line that all has to be rectified. And I'm hoping that the future Vernon isn't that reduced cross section can help toward getting the perpendicular crossing, all of that kind of stuff. And as Councilmember Staunton said, there's a lot of dominoes that have to fall, but it's really great that we can look to it, and as we're making decisions on a site like this, we can think about that. It may not happen, the day that this opens up, but we have to kind of think about what that could look like. The only other question I have is, you made a comment about 49th. Is that the 49th that you were just referring to? Did you do some of those?
We did the second duplex. There's an apartment building on the corner of France and 49th, and then there's a duplex, and then the next one's ours.
Okay.
And we actually I think we own a couple more lots in there too that we haven't done anything with yet. But basically what's happened there, of course, is older duplexes. Again, housing stock does wear out, and what we're finding is we've been pretty good at finding worn out stock and finding something to replace it. So.
Okay. I didn't realize that those were some of yours. The other question here is that there was Carrie, you said this is zoned single family, but yet there's a four unit apartment building on this site. So when we talk about if we get down the road and we decide that we've got to rezone this, it's not like we're taking a single family, it's zoned single family, but there's not been the use.
Correct.
So does that change a little bit of the dynamics of that?
Yeah, I think it does. It's non-conforming use today, but we need to rectify that.
So in some ways, we would be, yes, it's changing the zoning, but it's really taking a non-conforming use and conforming it. And then the fact that building isn't going to be the same building, it's still a multifamily type situation.
Correct, yep.
I was just trying to think about that. The park, I'm not understanding, are you suggesting that the park would be built out as part of this project, or are you suggesting an idea that the city might want to do at some point in the future?
McDonough's have always seen it as an asset, and we agree. Obviously, it isn't our business, but yet we see it as an asset both to the neighborhood and our project. So if while we're working on the building, we're working on seeing if that can work and helping facilitate it, that would be a goal. But like I say, I am seeing this as we're working on an approval for the building sketch plan, and the park is simply an asset in the area that we saw as a piece of property that was not being utilized or not being utilized properly. And by trying to bring that to the forefront too, it could improve the whole area as well. It balances a little bit maybe of what we're talking about doing with the building.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. I'm thinking about over the years when I've been asked to come and talk to the realtors, whether it's Edina Realty or Coldwell Banker, Remax, they're always wondering about where's the townhome product. We want townhomes to sell. And I'd say that's the most, plus where's the condominiums? There hasn't been a condominium built for over 10 years. So I join my colleagues in loving the concept of the for sale townhomes that Member Brindle mentioned first. So that's a good thing, the good part of it. I do have some concerns as expressed by Member Fisher. I don't care for the way the project looks from the front, from Hankerson, where you've got the front loading garages, and then as Member Fisher said, it's driveway.
Sure.
There's something about it that overall it cheapens the whole project to me. And I know the nice work that Donna does, and I've seen the work you've done over on 49th. You've done some beautiful work over there. I just think we need to be contemplating how to make this project work right. And then to the point you were making about, we were thinking townhouse and not condominium here. When Member Fisher talked about common parking underneath, it might be a good idea to look at the Coventry model.
Yes.
When you think about it, because they have backyards.
Right.
They've got their own backyards, fenced in, but they've got their own backyards.
Sure.
Could certainly have fenced in backyards here. And look at the way that ownership is structured. So
Sure.
they own more than, the inside of their unit like you might in a condominium. And also take a look at those brownstones on France.
Right.
And talk to Ed Noonan, because I think that got structured in a way where they own their own units, and I don't know about the exterior portion of it or the common ownership relative to the gardens in the middle of the U-shaped structure. But those might be worth looking at as models as well, because I think it would make all the difference in the world in how this project appeared if we could get the parking underground.
Sure.
I don't know what the water table's like over there. I understand it adds to the cost, but the increase in the aesthetic value and I think the sale value of the property would be pretty astounding. People in our community have some pretty high standards that from building here. You mean 10% of the building permits are yours, you say.
We believe so, yes.
So, and the product you're putting on the street for resale is really very special, and I think you want to do the same thing here.
I agree.
And that's your market,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we should try to figure that out. You should try to take the lead on that. I'm bothered by that north side setback too, as everybody else is. That 6 feet from the property line, I find really bothersome. And I'm sure you've run the economics on this to look at how many units you need to make this thing work, but I don't know how to solve the problem. I suppose if you buy the house next door, if it was even for sale, then you march north and you maybe face the same problem up at the north end of that lot. So
that one wasn't for sale, but the next one was.
I'm going to be personally protective of that single-family homeowner and their setback rights, because I don't want to have their property values diminished by virtue of the fact that we've gone from a 35-foot side yard setback requirement to 6 feet. That's too much of a stretch for me.
Very good.
And those are the main comments I have. I'm pleased that you came in the way you did with something better than just a sketch on a napkin. It gave us enough to work with, to be able to give you some ideas. But I think you're on the right track. It is, I think, as my colleagues have expressed, a wonderful potential use for that piece of property in that location. I think would add greatly to the Grandview district. And I think you're thinking the right way about it. Let's just maximize the product in typical Dene fashion and figure out how we can get this done.
Very good.
Okay, good. All right, anybody else have further comments? All right, thank you, everybody. All right, that concludes the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. Correspondence petitions, I'm assuming, we did get a petition on sidewalks and curb and gutter. Should we receive that petition? Do you want us to receive that petition?
Yes, we do. We do want to.
All right, is there a motion to receive the petition with respect to sidewalks and curb and gutter? That's part of our agenda this evening.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Only
This
that
involves Creek Valley Road.
Only that it's, wasn't that many years ago where it would have been unthinkable that people would be petitioning for sidewalks. And clearly we're making a lot of progress in that area, and folks are seeing the value of it.
Great observation. All right, we got a motion and a second to receive the petition for sidewalk and curb and gutter on Creek Valley Road. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And let's see. Nothing else, I don't think, in that portion of the agenda. Manager Neal, we can go to aviation noise update. Member Brindle, anything?
Yeah, we do have one. I'll defer to Councilmember Brindle on this, but we.
All right.
Aviation?
Well, we did hold a listening session on July 24th at the South Metro Public Safety Training Facility. The staff at that site were terrific, and we thank them for their hospitality and their warm welcome. We had about 30 people in attendance. It was a good discussion. So we had members of the Metropolitan Airport Commission. We had a gentleman from the FAA, and it was a lively discussion and able to give perspectives from the Noise Oversight Committee and also from the FAA. And the most important part of that, I think, in that conversation is that the residents who attended had a direct conversation with a person from the FAA. So ultimately, when the Noise Oversight Committee hears from residents, we talk about what we're hearing. We talk about what can we recommend? What kind of changes can we recommend based on what we're hearing? Can we recommend that the jets, the pilots turn sooner after they take off? Can we recommend that they get higher faster? Can we recommend, what can we recommend? And then the FAA takes that and considers it. We're at a time where the FAA is particularly more attentive to what they're hearing from residents than maybe 10 years ago. I think in the last probably 4 or 5 years, it's definitely a different environment with the conversation and understanding the noise. So it was a good discussion. We are still continuing. I'm seeing emails go back and forth between the MAC and people who were at the conversation, and so the discussion is continuing. So it was very good, and I think people appreciated it. So our next Noise Oversight Committee meeting is Wednesday, September 18th at 1:30 at MAC headquarters on 28th Avenue, just south of Crosstown. And at that meeting, Brad Jufer, who is the manager of community relations, will be presenting the same presentation he gave at the listening session, because it was really good. And I told him, I said, we've never seen this at the NOC. It was information presented in a great format and good illustrations. And so he is going to do that, and therefore it'll be on the record. So I'll recommend at that time that the MAC put this on the NOC website so people can look at it. He'll probably have to give some more explanations within the presentation, make it more self-explanatory, but it was good, and it was well received.
Thank you.
Oh, and one last thing. I was voted in as the
rep?
primary at-large committee member.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
now I sit on the dais representing all the at-large cities.
Fantastic. And there are, what, a half a dozen of those or so?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Mhm.
And for both you and Manager Neal, I would tell you that I'm having lunch tomorrow with Brian Ricks from
Oh, nice.
the MAC. So if there's anything you want me to cover with him, let me know.
All right.
Okay, good. Manager Neal, anything aviation related?
No, it was really quite a good session. We had, I think, 2 state legislators there, and
Oh, that's right.
Our MAC representative, Katie Clark-Steven, was
That's
also
right.
there last night. So it was a good, well, it was well attended and good crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, thank you. Mayor and council comments. Member Fisher.
I don't think I have anything tonight.
No baseball tales from your son in Kentucky?
We're exhausted because we just got back, but they won the league championship, so
Oh,
that was
wow.
good. So we're all done. Now
Cool.
he's off, getting ready to go. So I get to take another trip, this time to Mississippi. So
Good.
never
Thank you.
stops.
Member Staunton.
Just a couple of things. One, I wanted to mention and I had mentioned this to Director Teague. I wanted to mention something I had heard from a resident who lives over in the part of town east of France, north of 62, where we've had a lot of redevelopment activity. And they have a young family, and they're remodeling their home. And as part of that process, discovered that the home had been originally sited across what is now the front yard setback line, and it ended up being a couple of inches over even when they peeled off the facing, and they ended up having to go through a variance, and I don't know where that is in the process. And it's not so much that project as it got me thinking that we might want to think about ways that we can make it easier for people who want to remodel instead of tear down and rebuild to do that. And this might be one of those kind of examples where you know, my experience with the tear down rebuild versus the remodel is there's all these hassles and expenses that go along with remodeling that ultimately people want to do it, they want to keep the character of the neighborhood they live in, and then after a while they just throw up their hands and say, whatever, we'll just do the tear down rebuild. And I think we should maybe ask the Planning Commission as part of their work to think about, are there some little things like this that we could do to make it easier for somebody to proceed with a remodel? It's not like it was a tipping point or a straw that broke the camel's back. It was just one more little thing that made it harder to do that. And if there were a set of things we could do to try and make that easier, I think that would be a good thing to pursue. So I just throw that out there. Secondly, was a couple of issues that came up from tonight. I'd re-emphasize my frustration on the Highlands Pond stuff. It is really, and I know this isn't the only place this is happening. We've got stormwater everywhere in the city, and whether it be Biscayne Boulevard, not Bay, or the the whole Crocker Lynn Avenue in Morningside, or this area, people are experiencing this in lots of different ways. But it really has changed the nature of that park over there. And it used to be that was a real asset, the woods behind those in the kind of wild part of the park. And it was a nice quarter-mile walking path, and now that's not possible for people who want to cut through to go down to the park, or kids from that Skyline Drive or upper area who want to get to school have to go the long way around. So I really would like us to, sooner rather than later, try and figure out a fix to that. And then the last thing that I would mention is the conversation from Explore Edina, I thought was a good reminder about how I think we really need to tackle this community center issue and figure out what we want, and then we can figure out where it belongs. And it seems to me there's a lot of people who we could assemble into some kind of a task force or a committee that, I hear from the arts community, whether it be the Edina Art Festival or Fall into the Arts. Denny Metzold from the Crime Prevention Fund has been working on those projects, because in the Crime Prevention Fund, we partner with Fall into the Arts on that project. Explore Edina and the Chamber of Commerce are great examples of how, they're trying to figure out a place where everybody in the community can come together. I know from my work on the Community Ed Advisory Board that Community Ed and Park and Rec are looking at this. I know Rotary is interested. I know the Community Foundation is interested, and there are so many different things that are going on in this community that we could do better if we had at least a center that was a community center, because the one that we've called a community center for years has just shrunk and shrunk to the point where, understandably, it's school district property and they need to use it in different ways. And we really need to explore this idea of a community center. So I would ask that we think about, the summer wasn't a good time to do that, but we've got people on our Arts and Culture Commission, we've got people on our Park and Rec Commission, we've got people from Rotary or the Chamber or the Community Foundation or Crime Prevention Fund, that we get a group of people together to try and help us figure out the answer to this once and for all, so we can move forward in a positive direction. So those are the things that I wanted to share, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Member Brendel.
Let's see. Well, in light of your comment about the remodel in the Hidden Valley neighborhood over there, north of Crosstown, east of France, Director Teague, do I recall correctly, when someone has a home that has a non-conformance, like a non-conforming setback, and they want to do something, can't they do it to that non-conforming setback?
Yes, they can't expand closer to the lot line, but they can, within that existing non-conforming setback, expand up to 200 square feet.
Okay.
But they can't go up.
They can't go up.
Without a variance.
Oh,
If it's a
I
one-story, they couldn't go up.
I
correct.
see. Okay, very good. Well, that's good clarification to have.
Nor could they expand side to side in the encroachment. They can just expand in other parts that aren't encroaching, right?
They can't get closer to the lot line, but
So they could
can
expand horizontally?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they could stay one story and use that up to 200 square feet.
They could use the existing
Yeah.
setback, yes.
Okay. All right, and the only other thing I have is that we're heading into a weekend where I think it's maybe the biggest event at Centennial Lakes of the year, and that's the Torchlight Concert.
What night?
Sunday.
This coming Sunday.
This coming Sunday.
Thank you.
The weather's supposed to be good. That means we've got 4,000, maybe 4,500 people at Centennial Lakes. I think they park anywhere they can. The lower level of the office parking structure just to the south, public parking. And nobody's working on Sunday night at 8 o'clock, so park over there, either level. But yeah, I mean, they put their chairs and blankets anywhere they possibly can. And it's a fabulous evening. So it starts at about 6:30 with ice cream and balloons and magic and some fun stuff in the park to just enjoy the park. And then the Lighthouse Night, the Edina Model Boat Club brings their boats out at about 6 o'clock. And then they run them into the evening. They have them lit. And then the concert begins at 8:30 and we play in the dark. And it's just an enchanted evening. There's 200 tiki torches around the park, and We hang candles in hurricane shades. We hang those in the trees. And it's just a fabulous evening. So please come out and enjoy, and just it's a huge shout out to the staff support and the City of Edina support for events like this that occur in the parks. They can't happen without a staff that's really supportive. And Tom Shirley and the Centennial Lake staff, they're fabulous. And that's why we can do this. So come on out.
Great, thank you.
It's free.
Member Anderson.
Thank you. Just to follow up on our discussion tonight of the chamber as well as hockey, I wanted to mention that I was at Braemar earlier this week, and you know they play Monday and Wednesday nights now, the Beauty League that's at Braemar. There was not a parking place available in that lot. It was really quite surprising. Maybe some of it was they recognized Team Minnesota there on Monday night. Of the 15 skaters that went to Edmonton the first week in July, 4 kids from Edina were on that team. It was impressive. I just thought it was real interesting to be very close and personal to NHL level hockey. And those guys were interacting with the kids and the whole thing. And, you know, our place was packed. And the concessions were wild, and I just thought, gee whiz, that's pretty cool. So any event that draws people in is always worthwhile. The other thing is, last night, of course, was the National Night Out. I don't know that there could have been a better night for it. It was remarkable, I thought. I got to 4 of them, and that's easy for me because I just go to my daughter's houses, and you know whatever's going on around there, there's one there. So then go home. So that was, but it was a fun night, and. I don't know though how many were there. Is that down in number at all?
97. Yeah.
There were 97.
Okay.
Yeah. And I saw some of our police force out and attending with the lights on. That was impressive for the kids especially. So I just thought that it was. I thought it was so well done, and the neighborhood groups were so excited and happy to be there. Weather was great, and they all want to talk in very positive terms about what's happening in our town. I thought that was fun. So that was that.
Great.
Good. Thanks. On that same theme, Night to Unite, Deputy Chief Olaski and Brian Tholen and I went out. We hit 4 as well. We started over on Park Lawn and went over to the Edinburgh condominiums and then over to Chowan Park, 56th and Chowan. Had some great conversations at every location. Our last stop was over by St. Peter's on about 52nd in France, and they were starting to wind down a little bit, but we still had some good conversations over there as well. So it is a wonderful night, I think, for the neighbors to be able to get together. Let's see, what else was I going to comment on? I think that was the main thing. Over at the tab, we got a policy group working on some revisions to the regional solicitation. We just had a meeting on that on the 5th, Monday, and then also back on the 22nd of July. We've had 6 meetings. We'll make some recommendations to the tab here shortly on some changes in the potential changes in the regional solicitation. And I think that's about it for me. I would join Member Staunton in commenting on the visits that both of us have had over there, multiple visits to that little park in his neighborhood. Part of it behind Bob Tingdon's house. It's now the water's covering part of his tennis court. And then I think Anir Silver spoke to the issue well, and it's one of the things that gives me pause is that when we have a problem on property that we own that's intruding on and causing damage to or potential diminishment in value of private property, what are our obligations? And beyond the legal requirements, just thinking about us as public servants and representing our residents, what should we be doing to try to make sure these problems aren't happening? And to me, we're not doing enough about it yet. And that's not an easy one to solve, but I think it is solvable. And I think we should be doing something about it. So to just throw up our hands and say, well, this is the way it is, that's not something that I accept personally. So I think we're going to have conversation about this and maybe a work session on it.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you a question? Follow-up. This came up when Councilmember Staunton was talking about it as well. One of the folks that presented during community comment felt like she was looking at me, but hopefully she's looking at all of us. But she made a comment about we've been sitting on our hands, or the council's not. It was almost sort of the suggestion that something was being proposed that we didn't act on. I'm not aware of anything. I mean, I've heard there are issues over there, but I hear about issues in a number of locations in our community that are due to stormwater and increased rain and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to clarify, there hasn't been anything that's come before this council,
I think
correct?
that she's trying to move us to action on that particular problem.
So what she was
But
really getting at is
we've addressed some
do
issues
something.
down at Biscayne Boulevard and other places where some of these stormwater issues have popped up. But it's a thorny one over there in the Highlands neighborhood. But it involves, I think, Highlands Lake and some of the observations I think that were made by from your neighborhood, Kevin, Sue Punch Hess, concerns over what's happening in the wooded area and the fact that the material's dying in that pond, and it's been dredged in the past. And I think if you talk to Bob Coteen, he'll talk about a time when it was dredged and the clay bottom of it got punched and all the water drained down. It gave room to, kind of keep the lake intact. But now the bulrushes are starting to encroach on the further and further into the lake, and it's less like a body of water now than it is just a slough. Mm-hmm. So I think it needs some attention. And I remember several years ago, we worked with the watershed district and dredged out Pamela Park, and that may need it again. But that was a project we undertook together with the watershed district to clean up a body of water, and I don't see why we can't start looking at some of these other bodies of water as well. So. Okay, Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. Two things for you. One regards the Housing Strategy Task Force. The group has had, by this time, 3 meetings maybe? Yeah, 3 or 4 meetings by this time. And it's becoming clearer, I would say, as the group continues to meet, that the timeline delay or timeline impact of the housing task force, or excuse me, of the housing study, the Maxfield work that we're having done, is critical to them in order for them to move forward with their charter or with their charge. We don't expect that work from Maxfield to be completed until later this year, probably late this year, actually. And it's becoming clear as we start to look at that and listen to their concerns about their timeline, particularly the timeline we gave them to complete their work, that they just won't be able to complete it, given the time frame that we were hoping to achieve. So I'm giving you a heads up, I think, that I'm going to be coming back to you with a request to extend their deadline. And they support that. We were concerned perhaps that we'd lose some folks, that if we asked them to stay on for another year even perhaps, that maybe we'd lose some folks who wanted just to be there for that 7 or 8 months and be done. We think that's not the case. But I just wanted to tell you that because they're starting to feel that, they're starting to talk to us about it, and we're going to have a meeting. Their next meeting is Friday. So we do want to have some discussion with them to tell them that this is a possibility, and that's where we are today.
Okay, good.
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
can I just,
Member Staunton.
I mean, my take on it is the quality is more important than speed, and that we need to do this right. I don't want to dawdle, but I don't think they're dawdling. Just the informal conversations I've had with some of the members, they're taking it really seriously, and they understand it's a pretty enormous task, and I think they want to try and do the best job they can, and they don't want to be artificially hemmed in by a date. So I'm open to talking about different timelines, so long as as long as it's kind of driven by what they think they need to do the right job.
Okay. We will use this time wisely between now and when Mary Bujo from Maxfield is completed with their work. We've got lots of opportunities to educate them on zoning ordinances and comp plan and trends and parks and rec and diversity and inclusion and all kinds of city services, all of those kinds of things. So the time won't be wasted, but it will be delayed, I think.
Do we have a sense of when the Maxfield report is due?
Our earliest sense is going to be later this year, but certainly in 2019. So it could be, yeah.
So into the fall?
Yeah, into the fall.
All right.
Into early winter, probably.
Ooh, all right.
So I have a question on that. The work product that they provide, were we looking to include that in the comp plan?
Councilmember Brindle and members of council, that's a great question, and it's one that they've actually spent a lot of time talking about because they came to the task force with different understandings of that very question. What we've told them is that Chapter 4 of the comp plan is written and finished, and it's been preliminarily approved by the city council, and it's in the process now of getting the kind of the extra, the city reviews from all of our neighbors. That being said, if they come forward with recommendations that are different than what's in our comp plan, we'll bring that to you, or you'll bring it to us, or you'll bring it to the table, and we can consider those changes. That's how we've framed it to them.
But yet, we're not going to move our comp plan deadline
No,
of
we're
the
not.
end of the
No.
year.
Nope.
I don't think we can.
No, I don't think we can either.
No.
So, all right, I just wanted to be clear about that. All right, thanks.
I think that it's quite possible that there's going to be a convergence of timelines in terms of Maxfield's research as well as the work of the task force. And so, as those two timelines come closer together, it becomes, I think, even that much more useful to compare. And I think that the Maxfield research report will be very useful to the task force, for sure. I don't know how long that they're going to need to go through that, analyze it, and try to apply it. But they will have come, I believe, certainly if it's going to be out into October, November, they will have come to certain points of view and understood what they're really dealing with and have a longer term view. And that's really good. I think those two bodies together is going to be extremely useful and will help us quite a bit going forward. So it's worth it to spend the time.
Yep, I agree too.
You caused me to think of a couple other things. One quickly, to just put on people's calendar, on their radar, September 12th, and this all hinges on having an HRA meeting that I probably won't be able to attend that morning in view of the fact that I committed to being part of a panel for the South Metro Development Summit put on by the Real Estate Business Journal that morning at Golden Valley. So depending on whether we have an HRA meeting or not, if we don't happen to have one that morning, folks should have that on their calendars and think about attending. I think they're always at Golden Valley Country Club, as I recall. I think it is again that morning. And then one of the real leadership responsibilities I think we have this year is related to the census. And of course, we've got a good team of folks working on it, that complete count group, and they've been working for several months. You and I have talked about it. But I think because we're the responsible body to make sure that we get a complete count at the end of the day, I think we should have an interim report or some kind of update report from the census group. They should come to a council meeting and give us an update on how they're coming on their work and whether they need any guidance from us on any particular issue or have any particular concerns that we need to address.
We'll set that up.
Okay, good.
The last item I have for you really was one that came up tonight, and that's the Bowles family that appeared before you tonight. You have received 2 petitions or 3 petitions, Mr. Miller?
Just the one petition in February from from Pat.
So you've received this before, you acted on it, and your action was to move the project forward. So this project is ready for construction. I mean, they're concerned, and they're here tonight because it's likely this project is going to start on Monday.
Monday. So we already have a contract with
Right.
2 Minutes Roadways.
So we're too far down the line to stop the project for the reasons that have been proposed. We've had multiple conversations with the Bulls family over the last few months. That's where we are. That's where we are. So
I'm glad you brought that up. I had a note on that. I was going to ask you. It seemed to me like we'd addressed this issue before.
You have.
So.
Correct. You had the public hearing in December, then you approved it then she brought a petition, you accepted staff's report to continue on with the project, and you awarded a project, and if it wasn't for high creek levels, that street would probably be done already. So it has to do with the removal of sediment out of the creek, but they intend to start the water main, drilling in the new water main and providing that fire protection back in that gravel alley, 3-4 homes in on Monday.
So this is a project that's gone through all of our kind of multi-year steps and stages of public meetings and public hearings, and it's been authorized. We have a contract, and it is under contract to go. So that's where we are with that project. It would be really ill-advised to stop it at this point unless there was something substantially wrong with it, and there just isn't anything substantially wrong with it in a bona fide kind of way.
Okay. Any council thoughts on that? I mean, we've made a decision on it, had a public hearing. All right.
And that's all I've got for you tonight.
Okay. Anything else that caused anyone else in the council to have some other thoughts they wanted to share? All right, very good. We will stand adjourned.